That monster was breathtakingly ugly. It was like a giant worm, but countless hair-like tentacles writhed from the sides of its body. The beast crawled out of the black water, its body still dripping the corrosive liquid of the sea. When the white tiger saw the monster, its expression changed. It roared to the sky, its mouth stretched wide open. Then, a mushroom rain began to storm down on the big monster. The mushrooms exploded near the monster, turning into giant spore clouds that hung in the air. Mushrooms began to grow on the heads of the snakes all around the spores. As the small mushrooms grew, the bodies of the snakes were sucked dry. They collapsed onto the ground like dust. Fang Qingyu and the pirates stared at the battle with wide eyes. The pirates were so scared, and they screamed, "If our mushrooms grow big, will they suck us dry, too?" Everyone was scared, but Han Sen reassured them by saying, "Don't worry. The mushrooms on our heads are different from the mushrooms plaguing those snakes." The crew felt much safer after Han Sen said that, although their nerves continued to rattle. The ugly monster stood in the center of those spore clouds, and the clouds were heaviest right around the monster's body. But even so, it didn't seem to be afflicted with the power-draining mushrooms. The monster moved onto the island. It ate a lot of mushrooms, and the strange snakes moved with it. The white tiger was unable to do anything to stop them. The white tiger kept firing its mushroom rain, but that attack only seemed to affect the smaller snakes. It did nothing to that horrendous beast. Furthermore, the monster was so unaffected that it completely ignored the white tiger. It simply dragged its mountainous body toward the mushroom forest. It opened its mouth wide and began gnashing its teeth to bite and chew. It was able to swallow a few acres of forest in no time. No matter how many mushrooms the island contained, it clearly wouldn't be enough to sate the hunger of that monster. The white tiger became extremely upset as it watched the enormous beast. The white tiger dug its head into the ground and disappeared. No way. It ran away so soon? Fang Qingyu and the others hadn't expected that. But the next second, the white tiger emerged underneath the monster. Its claws tore into the white tiger's belly. For a split second, everyone thought that the white tiger had cleverly gained the upper hand. Then the monster's silky tentacles moved, reaching down and tying up the white tiger like a zongzi. The white tiger struggled and roared, but it couldn't escape from the tentacles. Those tiny tentacles appeared to be alive. They traced the white tiger's mouth, ears, eyes, and nose. Then the lecherous things began drilling into each orifice. The white tiger began to release horrendous, deafening screams. Everyone felt a chill while watching it. Their bodies flared with goosebumps. They had seen many people be killed before, and not even watching a person be dismembered would make them flinch. But seeing all those hair-like tentacles drilling into the mouth, ears, eyes, and nostrils of the white tiger was enough to give them a proper chill. The white tiger kept struggling. It tried to gnaw and bite off the silk-like tentacles, but once the tentacles were bitten free, they could still move of their own volition. They were like worms, drilling into the creature's body. The sight made people feel itchy. "Little Red, go and help him," Han Sen said to the little red bird. The little red bird flew, and flames bloomed around it. As it departed the white whale, it became a fiery phoenix. Wherever it flew, red flames rose around it and incinerated the snakes in its proximity. Golden fire shot from the little red bird's mouth. The fire landed atop the silk-like tentacles and burned them to dust. The white tiger was saved and freed from the bindings that coiled around it. The monster seemed to be frightened by the fires of the little red bird's phoenix flame. It stopped eating the mushrooms, spun its body around, and used the eye upon its forehead to stare at the little red bird. The little red bird screeched loudly. It flapped its wings, sending its phoenix flames raging toward the monster like a firestorm. The monster's countless tentacles suddenly wrapped around its body, forming a ball-shaped shell. The phoenix flames landed atop the newly formed shell and started to burn through it. But the fire only made it through the outer layer. There were more layers on the inside. The fire burned deeper, but the tentacles seemed endless. No amount of burning would be enough, it appeared. Pang! The little red bird was happily burning away at the monster when suddenly, a big spear that was like a mountain came out from the rocks beneath. The spear hit the little red bird before it could react and sent the little red bird spinning away amidst a haze of fiery explosions. Han Sen had a closer look, and he found that the giant spear had been formed from the monster's smaller tentacles. After the hit that the little red bird had taken, its fires seemed to be weaker. It screamed in rage, and when it screamed, the strength and vigor of its flames returned. It hurled itself back into the fight with the monster. The monster moved its silk tentacles, letting them writhe together. Many wings formed around the monster's body, and those wings began to beat in tandem to make the body of the creature fly very quickly. It was no slower than the little red bird. The monster and the little red bird chased each other through the air. The silk tentacles on the monster seemed innumerable, and they could take on any shape. They could form shields and weapons if they wished to. The little red bird's fire could drive back the tentacles for a while, but no lasting damage was ever done. A lot of the weird snakes were still headed for the island, and the white tiger remained there to deal with them. But there were still too many of them, and it didn't matter how many were killed, as more and more would show up. They refused to retreat from the island. Whoever is king class or above should go out there and help, Han Sen said. Then, he summoned his Peacock King's soul robe and hastily departed the white whale. Bauer jumped onto Han Sen's shoulder to go with him. Gu Qingcheng and Elysian Moon went with him, too. The Extreme King Knights and pirates also went out to fight. They knew this was a matter of life and death, and so nobody thought twice about going out there to fight. Han Sen didn't go after the horde of snakes, though. He was headed for the little red bird and the monster that were still fighting in the sky. His body glowed like a rainbow as he flew toward the monster. The monster reacted to his approach incredibly quickly. It continued to fight the little red bird, but it also spawned many more tentacles that formed a shield to stop the corrosion induced by the rainbow light. While the rainbow light quickly melted through the makeshift shield, the tentacles were able to immediately form a new one. It would continue doing so until the rainbow light cast by Han Sen was finished. When Han Sen got close to the monster, the tentacles formed a big hammer that tried to strike him. Han Sen looped through the air like a phoenix to avoid the hammer. He cast a rainbow light across his body, but the rainbow light was blocked by another shield of tentacles. Although the monster was fighting two enemies, it was dealing with Han Sen and the little red bird's attacks with perfect precision. The monster was like a fighting machine. It could rotate 360 degrees in a moment, and it could release tentacles from any part of its body. The tentacles could weave themselves together to create whatever weapon or defense best suited the needs of its fight. The scariest thing about it was that the tentacles were deified class, and the whole composition of the beast had a strong life power. No matter how many times it was struck, it could recompose itself. Facing such an opponent, Han Sen and the little red bird weren't sure what to do. Han Sen and the bird were attacking the monster together, but they were at a disadvantage. Real deified xenogeneics are scary. Those fake deified xenogeneics in the core area are nothing compared to this. Han Sen was shocked. He couldn't think of a way in which they could defeat this foe. An idea occurred to him, and he summoned his 6-core snake bow. He didn't have any deified arrows for it, so he had to summon a king-class arrow beast soul. He placed the arrow on the 6-core snake bow and pulled the string. Whoosh! The moment Han Sen let the arrow fly, the 6-core snake bow's 6-wheel spun. The arrow was imbued with a strange power, and it immediately disappeared. When the arrow appeared again, it was in front of the monster. It soared right into the eye upon the monster's forehead. The 6-core snake bow gives space power to the arrows it shoots. Han Sen realized with pleasure. That meant every arrow the 6-core snake bow fired would teleport. That was better than Han Sen's skill for drilling arrows. When people were shot by an arrow from this bow, they wouldn't be able to trace its path toward them. Plus, Han Sen was also able to tell that the arrow could tear through the fabric of space. That was the power the 6-core snake bow could imbue upon the projectiles he used with it. The King-class Beast Soul arrow received enough of a buff from the 6-core snake bow to pierce through the monster's eye. Half the arrow embedded itself firmly in the eye, and blood sprayed out around it. This is a nice bow, Han Sen thought happily. The bow's power was perfect for Han Sen, but Han Sen didn't stay happy for long. Tentacles grew from the injured monster's eye. The tentacles wrapped around the beast's soul arrow and removed the power Han Sen had given to the projectile. Then the monster pulled out the beast's soul arrow and cracked it. That injured eye was covered by tentacles and swiftly healed. Is the monster's entire body made of silk? Han Sen wondered. Quickly, Han Sen's guess was confirmed. He used his 6-core snake bow to strike the monster's body. The same result was achieved. No matter where Han Sen fired, tentacles would appear and patch up the monster in no time at all. I believe I can kill you. Han Sen added his turtle spell to the arrow in a bid to slow the beast down. The turtle skill was applied to the monster. It managed to make the monster's body slower, but Han Sen was soon surprised to learn that the monster could shed the parts of its body that contained turtle, that removed the effects of the spell from the greater mass of the beast. Han Sen tried to apply the turtle symbol in many different ways, but ultimately, it was ineffective. The monster was like a gecko that could keep reproducing its tail. This creature could cut off any part of its body to no negative effect. This guy is more disgusting than Bar, Han Sen said. The little red bird and Han Sen didn't know what to do against the monster. The monster kept using its tentacles to form all sorts of different weapons to attack them. Some of its attacks changed weapons unexpectedly at the last moment. It could make knives, spears, swords, and sticks. It could also make shields and fists. The monster was like an invincible killing machine. It was giving Han Sen and the little red bird a headache. Gu Qingcheng and the others were helping the white tiger tackle all the smaller snakes, but things weren't going so well for them either. More and more of those weird snakes slithered up onto the island. Their numbers were growing. Whenever the defenders killed one snake, 2 more took its place. Half the island was now wholly swarmed by the snakes. The white tiger suddenly meowed to the sky. Its cry was directed at Han Sen. Han Sen didn't understand what the white tiger wanted. The white tiger jumped and drilled into the ground. When it reappeared, it was 100 miles away. Then, it called to Han Sen again. Han Sen now understood. It wanted Han Sen to follow it. Although Han Sen didn't understand what the white tiger was thinking, he knew that fighting like this was futile. Even if he and the little red bird could survive, Fang Qingyu and the others would likely be killed. Bauer, you drive. Follow it and let's go. Han Sen threw Bauer into the white whale. Bauer dropped through the air. When the ground came near, she flipped and landed softly upon the white whale. She hurried inside and fired it up, then piloted it toward the white tiger. Gu Qingcheng and the others fell back to the white whale as well. Han Sen and the little red bird kept fighting as they made their retreat. They wouldn't allow the monster a chance to attack the white whale. The group of snakes was like a black ocean beneath the white whale. They destroyed everything in sight. The fairy tale-like Mushroom Island was turned into a ruined, rocky crag. Han Sen and the little red bird flew a great distance away from the monster, but it no longer seemed to be going after them. It started to gorge on the mushrooms now that it could do so uninterrupted. Han Sen and the little red bird no longer provoked it. They flew next to the white whale to protect it, and as they did, they all proceeded to follow the white tiger. Their situation was a dire one. Food was now going to be a problem. The scariest thing was that the snakes and the monster were both issues that they had no idea how to solve. The white whale flew over the island. As they moved beyond the snakes, they saw the mushroom forest behind them get consumed. Suddenly, Han Sen's face grew pale as he looked at one snake among the writhing mass. After eating a lot of mushrooms, its body became larger. It swelled to 10 times its previous size, and its body started to grow tentacles. It was like a smaller version of that Goliath monster. They aren't snakes. They're baby versions of that big one. Han Sen and the others now understood. They looked quite glum. One monster was hard enough to deal with. If they all became monsters, it would be disastrous. And as everyone was trying to process the new information, a few more of the snakes grew bigger. They became just like the monster that was covered in tentacles. But their auras didn't reach the horrifying level of the largest one just yet. They were king class, most likely, and almost as good as a half-deified. Is this a joke? One of the pirates mumbled in shock. No one answered him, and that was because no one knew what it was. The white tiger kept running through the mushroom forest, but if the white whale started to lag, it would stop and roar up at them. It went back to running when they caught up. It was like it was leading them someplace. Han Sen and the others had explored this island many times before. Aside from the mushrooms, there was nothing special to be found. They had searched the broken battleship repeatedly, but nothing important was ever discovered. Where is the white tiger taking us? Is he going to take us away from here somehow? Han Sen wondered, intrigued. But Han Sen was soon disappointed. The white tiger wasn't planning on leaving the island. They came to a giant mushroom that was around 3 stories tall. The tiger walked up to the mushroom and slapped it. The mushroom fell over, revealing an underground cave that was hidden beneath. There's a cave below here? Han Sen murmured in surprise. He didn't know what material this island was made of, but the rocks were so hard that not even deified powers could shatter them. Making a cave there would be very difficult. The white tiger disappeared into the cave. After a while, it came out. It made some noises in Han Sen's direction, as if it was hurrying him to go in. Han Sen saw that the snakes weren't too far behind them. If they entered the cave now, the snakes might arrive before they had a chance to leave. That would thrust them into the maw of another nasty fight. But as Han Sen thought about it some more, he realized that they had little choice if they wanted to stay on the island. The snakes would be their enemies as long as they remained on the island, and there was little they could do against the snakes in their current state. Everyone disembarked the white whale. Han Sen shrank the white whale and put it away, then dropped into the underground cave. The others couldn't do anything except follow. They had been inside the cave for less than 30 seconds when the snakes arrived, covering the ground like a black blanket. Many of the slithery serpents poked their heads into the cave. Because there weren't any mushrooms, however, the snakes didn't seem to be very interested. After looking around the cave briefly, they crawled back out. Han Sen and the others continued to follow the white tiger. Han Sen soon realized that the cave was a natural formation, not a man-made hollow. That made him feel very relieved. If it was man-made, then whatever made the cave could be very dangerous to them. If it was natural, on the other hand, there was a chance it was just an ordinary cave that could help them avoid disaster. Why would that white tiger be so kind, bringing us to a cave to avoid disaster? Or is this part of a greater conspiracy? One of the pirates asked. Regardless, we need to keep walking. Unless you want to fight those monsters outside the cave, that is, another pirate said. Stop talking. We might as well explore the cave fully. Maybe that is where the white tiger stores its treasure. Who knows? We might be able to get something good out of it. The pirate crew was chattering among themselves when suddenly they felt something emerge from deeper in the cave. In fact, they did not see anything. They just felt something come forward. The next second, everyone felt a chill. Their clothes billowed as a cold wind rushed up from deeper in the cave. The cold wind wasn't very strong. It was the type of wind that would only make tree leaves flutter gently, so it wasn't harmful to Han Sen's group. However, the wind made everyone feel weirded out. One of the pirates said, Weird. There is wind underground. Does that mean there is an exit? Fong Qing Yu's eyes brightened, and he said, We're assuming that we've been in the black hole spider's stomach, right? If the ocean is the creature's stomach, there should be some organs that connect to it. Maybe accessing those organs can lead us to an exit. *T. Does that mean the wind was a fart? A pirate exclaimed, turning green. Fong Qing Yu's explanation made the others feel uncomfortable. But more than anything, they were just surprised. If this was true, they had a chance of escaping this hellish place alive. Escaping through the creature's intestines did not sound pleasant, but it would be better than dying. No matter how nasty the trip might be, life was more important. Everyone was full of hope. Their morale was given a big boost, and they followed the tiger at an eager pace. The tunnel twisted and corkscrewed, but in general, it was headed down. Some places were wide enough to let a plane fly through. Other places were so narrow that only one person could squeeze their way through at a time. As they traveled, the cool wind continued to blow over them from below. It was a very soft wind at first, but the deeper they went, the stronger it became. The stone walls on either side of them were smooth, which was undoubtedly a result of their exposure to the constant wind. It was like they had been caressed for 1 billion years. And then, they heard another wind-like sound. It came with the noise of distant, rumbling thunder. It was like an endless thunderstorm raging with the echoes of breaking space. The pirates felt as if their eardrums were about to pop. Fortunately, the wind wasn't strong enough to hurt anyone. It was just ominous. This is wrong. If this tunnel leads to the creature's guts, then it cannot keep farting this much. Maybe this black hole spider has an upset stomach? Please use your brains. Even if its stomach was upset, it would still need something to digest. That's what makes you feel sick. We have traveled all this way, and yet we have only found dry rocks. There is nothing. Then what do you think this place is? If I knew, I wouldn't be talking to you about it. The pirates were arguing amongst themselves again. They weren't arguing for fun, but they clearly needed to blow off some steam. They were trying to alleviate the stress of the situation. Han Sen had known early on that these weren't the spider's guts, and in the presence of all the wind made him feel quite strange. If there was no exit down below, then the presence of wind was weird. Han Sen wanted to ask the white tiger, but the white tiger only continued to run forward. It ignored them. So, getting information from that creature would be unlikely. Boom, boom, boom. The wind was coming up again. This time, it blew against them with greater strength. The force of the wind twisted the faces of the pirates into a variety of odd shapes. The skin of their faces flapped against their skulls with the wind. The Marquis-class Fong Qingyu was almost blown away completely. His body lifted into the air, and Han Sen had to reach out and grab him to keep him from blowing away. The wind is getting stronger here. Should we keep going? The group drifted to a stop and looked at Han Senator. He was their leader. Han Sen was hesitating, too. He didn't know much about the white tiger. Following the white tiger down into this random hole in the ground might not have been such a good idea, after all. If he could go back in time, he would not have led his people down there. As Han Sen pondered their current circumstances, the white tiger noticed they were no longer following. It turned around and rumbled at Han Sen, telling them to hurry. How about this? Well, the snakes haven't reached us yet, so this seems like a safe place to rest. You guys stay here while I scout ahead, Han Sen said to Fong Qingyu. Han Sen didn't care about the lives of the Extreme King Knights and pirates, but he did care about Gu Qingqing and Ningyu. Let us come with you. Gu Qingcheng and Elysian Moon decided to follow, having no interest in staying behind. Don't leave me here. Ningyu jumped forward. She clung to Han Sen's legs, knowing that following Han Sen was better than staying put. There was no getting rid of Ningyu, so Han Sen had to bring her with him. Gu Qingqing, Elysian Moon, Bauer, and the little red bird also came along. Fong Qingyu decided to stay behind. The further into the depths they went, the scarier the wind became. Whenever the wind blew, not even Gu Qingqing and Elysian Moon could keep their balance. They didn't know why the wind was becoming so strong as they went deeper. For there to be so much wind, there had to be a windy exit. But when he looked down, what was seen was a hellish crack. No air could escape. Ningyu was scared, but she was unaffected. The little green sword she wielded kept the scary wind from getting close to her. I wonder what that little green sword is. Its abilities are too scary, Han Sen said with a sigh. As Han Sen was thinking, the white tiger suddenly disappeared. It was like it had just vanished into thin air. Why has the white tiger disappeared? Ningyu shouted in fear. Before Han Sen could answer, the white tiger was there again. It rumbled at Han Sen, and while Han Sen was still reeling from the shock, it disappeared again. Han Sen and the others moved carefully forward and found a hole in the ground. It dropped almost straight down, which was why it looked like the white tiger had disappeared. Due to the angle, Han Sen hadn't noticed the hole until they were right on top of it. They followed the white tiger down, and what they found at the bottom caught Han Sen by surprise. It was a jar-shaped cave. They came in from the side, but there was no other exit. That place was a dead end. The fact that the cave was a dead end wasn't what had caught their attention, though. There was something in the cave. Han Sen didn't recognize the device. Most of it was obscured by the stone that covered it, and only about 1 foot of it could be seen. The device was purple like copper, and there were some strange symbols carved across it. It looked like the handle of something, but it wasn't like the grip of a sword or a knife. That was because this handle was only as thick as a couple of Han Sen's fingers. And even with the little they could see right now, the group knew that it was too long to be a normal handle. Boom. Han Sen and the others were still looking at that purple copper object that was buried by rocks when suddenly, a weird symbol shone with purple light. And right after, a scary storm came out of the purple object. Everyone was blown away by the wind. They bounced around the cave like rubber balls until the wind escaped through the passage they had used to enter. The respite afterward allowed them to get back on their feet. Han Sen and the little red bird had been left rather disheveled by the abrupt gust. The wind was far stronger than what they had experienced before. The wind was comparatively gentle when it entered the tunnel, but inside that cave, they were exposed to the full power of the gusts. What is this? How can it be so powerful? Han Sen looked at the purple copper object with shock. His eyes were glowing. Meow. The white tiger had walked over to stand next to the purple copper object. It used a paw to point at the item, and then it called to Han Sen. You mean, you want me to get it out of there? Han Sen asked. Meow, the white tiger said with a nod. Gu Qingcheng was staring intently at the purple copper object, and she made a guess. Maybe this thing can restrain the monster outside. Meow. The white tiger immediately nodded after hearing Gu Qingcheng speak. Is such a thing possible? Han Sen thought, suddenly excited by the prospect. He had been trying to think of a way they could deal with the monster on the island, but he hadn't yet come up with anything. If this weapon could be used against their enemies, then their crisis would be resolved, and Han Sen would receive another treasure, to boot. This was good. Han Sen didn't say anything, and he went straight up to the purple copper object. He used his purple eye butterfly to examine it. The purple eye butterfly spun around in Han Sen's eye like 4 cherry blossoms. Within Han Sen's vision, the history of the purple copper object began to play back like a movie. Han Sen was shocked. While the purple eye butterfly was rewinding, he was able to see what it was. It was a purple copper Jian swordbreaker. The Jian was a very rare weapon. It looked like a sword, but the blade was square. Rather than having a typical blade, which focused on sharpness, this weapon was all about strength. Ordinary Jians were used in pairs, so a single Jian was rare. There was only one weapon here, though. There might have been another one lying around somewhere, but if so, Han Sen hadn't seen it yet. For some reason, the Jian had been left behind in the Black Sea. Layers of sediment had accumulated from the Black Sea, slowly building up to form the island they were currently inside. Based on its depth, Han Sen couldn't help but wonder if the weapon had somehow drawn the sediment together to make this entire mushroom island. But that Jian's weird symbols kept releasing storms, so its handle was clear of any rock. Furthermore, it had carved out an entire cave. Based on how well it was hidden, Han Sen had no idea how the white tiger had found it. Han Sen then had a weird thought. That means this island is a stone inside the black hole spider's stomach. The spider should have expelled any substances it couldn't digest over the years. Instead, because of this purple copper Jian, the substances have built up into a solid mass. After billions of years, this entire island has been created. Let me try it, Elysian Moon said. As Han Sen watched, Elysian Moon walked over to the purple copper Jian. She cast a power and wrapped her hands around the exposed portion. Pang! Before Elysian Moon applied any strength to her grip, a frightening gale of wind blasted her body away at lightning speed. Han Sen and the others didn't fare much better. They did not know what the purple copper Jian was, but the fact that it could release such power when no one was even using it was amazing. Not even the little red bird could withstand the wind it summoned. This wasn't an ordinary item, that was for sure. It looks like a deified weapon with a wind element. Is there anyone who is a master of the element of wind? Gu Qingcheng said. Everyone swapped glances with each other. No one there really focused on wind. Let's keep trying. Maybe we don't have to be too attuned with the wind element. If we can't pull it out, we can remove the rocks that are surrounding it, Han Sen said. Elysian Moon nodded and drew her paper umbrella. She used it as a sword and slashed at the rocks atop the purple copper Jian. The tip of the umbrella unleashed a raging swordlight that slammed into the rock. That strike was strong enough to cut a hole through an entire planet, but when the light faded, the rocks weren't even scratched. Everyone stared at the undamaged rocks with slack jaws. Elysian Moon was as strong as a king class could be, but her full power attack hadn't even left a mark on the stones. The rock of that place was far sturdier than they could have imagined. "Little red bird," Han Sen called. The little red bird understood what Han Sen wanted to see from it, so it shot out its phoenix fire to burn the rocks around the purple copper gem. Surprisingly, it took half an hour of constant flames before the rocks even started to be affected. They began to turn red. If Han Sen tried to use the phoenix fire to melt the rocks into molten juice, God only knew how long that might take. Gu Qingsheng looked at the burning rocks and said, "The black hole spider has consumed many planets and stones. The spider must have eaten many high-class metals and special materials over the years, but its digestive system has failed to break down some of them. Anything that cannot be digested has come together to form these stones. If these rocks have withstood the digestive system of the deified black hole spider, it's easy to imagine how frighteningly strong this material might be. An ordinary deified won't have an easy time damaging these deified stones." Elysian Moon nodded to show agreement with what Gu Qingsheng just said. The black hole spider was a deified xenogeneic that was at the butterfly rank. If a monster like the spider couldn't digest a material, then Han Sen's people wouldn't be able to break it down either. Fortunately, the little red bird could slowly burn its way through the stones. With effort and patience, a clump of steel could be ground into a needle. Clearly, those were the qualities that they needed here: effort and patience. As the little red bird was still spewing its blazing fires, another gale of wind erupted from the purple copper gem. That wind scattered the phoenix fire everywhere, blowing it back across Han Sen and the others. Many pained screams erupted. The little red bird stopped spewing its phoenix fire, but it was too late. The flames had already left hair and eyebrows blackened and singed. They weren't badly injured, though. They just looked a little haggard now. "This purple copper gem keeps releasing gales of wind. We can't burn through the rocks to get to it. Is there another way?" Han Sen looked at Gu Qingsheng and the others. Everyone swapped glances with each other, but no one could come up with any ideas. "Then, we will try to take it one by one," Han Sen said. He summoned his Peacock King soul robe and walked up to the purple copper gem. A rainbow light covered his hands as he tried to pull out the weapon. The gem's mysterious patterns glowed with purple light, and then a scary storm flared from the purple copper gem. It blew everyone away. Han Sen held onto the gem. He lodged his feet against the rocks, and he tried to pull the purple copper gem free. After trying his hardest, though, he couldn't get it to budge. If anything, the storms of the gem became even stronger. It made Han Sen's feather robe and hair billow. Boom! Han Sen could no longer withstand that scary storm, so he was blown away. He bounced off a few rocks, but the wind was so strong that it continued to push him until he was thrown out of the cave. A while later, Han Sen flew back in. The storm in the cave had finally calmed down. "Ningyu, give it a try. Maybe you'll have greater success," Han Sen said to Ningyu. Ningyu shook her head and retreated a step. She said, "If you guys cannot do it, then I surely cannot. Just give it a shot. If you don't, I'll throw you to the snakes," Han Sen threatened. That storm wouldn't hurt anyone. It would toss them around, but it wouldn't kill them. Ningyu had the protection of her green sword. The storm didn't harm her. Perhaps she would be able to truly pull out the purple copper gem. Ningyu felt awful. She was so scared, but after Han Sen's threat, she reluctantly moved forward. Slowly, she placed her hands on the purple copper gem. Pang! Ningyu only had to touch the gem for the scary storm to return and blow her away. The power of the green sword didn't protect her this time. Ningyu rolled around for quite some time before coming to a stop. "I told you I didn't want to try, and yet you forced me." Instead of getting up, Ningyu sat where she had landed, her hair a jumbled mess. She almost cried. Han Sen felt a headache coming on. No one there was able to pull out the gem. Normally, if a treasure seemed to be truly unobtainable, Han Sen would leave it be. But now, if he didn't take that purple copper gem, he wouldn't be able to take out the monsters. They would be trapped in this cave. That was a miserable thought. "Dad, do you really want that purple copper gem?" Bauer asked, tugging on Han Sen's sleeves. "Yes, we need that purple copper gem. Do you have any ideas?" Han Sen asked Bauer happily. "Just pull it out," Bauer said. "If we were able to pull it out, we wouldn't be standing here doing nothing," Elysian Moon said. Ningyu cried and said, yes, this thing is so weird. When you touch it, the wind comes and it cannot be repelled. Bauer blinked and jumped toward the purple copper Jian. She reached out her hand to grip the Jian's handle. As she did, everyone readied themselves to weather the storm. They didn't want to get blown away again. But after Bauer's little hand grabbed the handle, no storm came. Bauer held the purple copper Jian tightly and then pulled it out as if she was unearthing a carrot. The purple copper Jian hadn't shown any indication that it would move for anyone else, but it slid out easily in Bauer's grip. Ningyu and the others stared with wide eyes, unable to believe Bauer was able to do what she had just done. Bauer pulled out the 1-meter-long purple copper Jian completely. It turned out to be taller than her. She delivered it to Han Sen and smiled. There you go, Dad. Bauer, you were so good. Dad will buy you ice cream later. Han Sen took the Jian, a wide grin stretching his mouth. Strangely, when the Jian was below the rocks, it would unleash storms whenever it was touched. Now that Han Sen was holding in his hand, there were no storms. Han Sen looked at the purple copper Jian. It was the same as the one he viewed through his purple eye butterfly. It was 1.2 meters long, its blade was square, and it was crafted out of some sort of purple copper. It was quite heavy. On all 4 sides of the tool, there were strange symbols. But those weird symbols were different from the strange symbols on the handle. Han Sen tried putting his power into the purple copper Jian to see if he could activate it. It was a surprisingly smooth process. After the power of the Dongxian Sutra entered the purple copper Jian, its symbols lit up. Then, it glowed with purple light. Han Sen was pleased to see the light shining from the activated weapon. If he couldn't use it after retrieving it, that would be very frustrating. It seemed as if he had worried too much about it. The purple symbols on the Jian lit up. Everyone in the cave could feel that the Jian's true power wasn't actually wind. It didn't resemble the power that had been released from its handle, at least. Buzz. The Jian's purple light grew stronger, then slowly transformed into purple flames. The purple copper Jian became enshrouded in fire, and the intense purple fire followed Han Sen's hand and started to spread across his body. As Han Sen held the purple copper Jian, his entire body was bathed in purple light. It was like an infinite number of purple stars were dancing around him. His whole body appeared blurry, as if his form was being obscured by purple clouds. Some strange power was at work, but Han Sen couldn't tell what it was. It felt so mysterious and difficult to understand. I wonder what this does, Han Sen wondered, intrigued. He swung the tool at the stone wall, and the purple starlight struck the rock, but the stone wall didn't move. Not a speck of damage was inflicted, and the purple stars were gone. Everyone looked closely at the stone wall. They thought that some sort of change would happen eventually, but after a while of waiting, the wall looked the same. Is it over? Ningyu asked in disbelief. I think it is over, Han Sen said as he looked at the purple copper Jian weirdly. He didn't know what all that had been about. The Jian had been brimming with power earlier as it repeatedly blew them to hell. But now, when he swung the Jian himself, nothing occurred. It was very strange. It must hold something other than destructive power. It should have another function, if we can figure it out. I wonder what element it is associated with, Gu Qingqing said with a frown. Han Sen thought the same thing, but he couldn't tell what element was associated with the purple copper Jian. Han Sen used his Dongxian area and the purple eye butterfly to examine it. He could see the universal cogwheels spinning within the Jian, but the universe cogwheels were different from anything that he had seen before. He couldn't discern what element they were. Han Sen tried to use the Jian's power a few times, but it didn't seem to do anything. Han Sen's attempts to attack the wall were failures, and when he brought out a book and swung the Jian against it, nothing happened there either. How weird. This Jian doesn't destroy anything. That is rare, Elysian Moon said. White Tiger, are you sure this Jian has the power to destroy the monsters out there? Han Sen asked the White Tiger. The White Tiger returned a vigorous nod, and then it growled encouragingly at Han Senator. It began to run back up through the tunnels, hurrying Han Sen to slay the monster. Han Sen had his doubts, but he had no choice. Taking the purple copper Jian with him, he began to run toward the surface. He would try to kill the monster with it. If he failed, he could escape and return underground with ease. When they saw the white tiger coming, Feng Qingyu and the others were given a shock. They all scattered and tried to run away. But when they saw Han Sen behind the tiger, they breathed a sigh of relief. Han Sen, however, didn't have the time to spare talking to them. He allowed them to stay there while he continued to follow the white tiger up through the tunnels. When they emerged, snakes were everywhere. Their numbers were unimaginable. Han Sen looked around, and he saw that the whole landmass had been swarmed by the snakes. There was a small part of the island that still had a few intact mushrooms, but it looked as if it would not be long before the snakes ate those too. There were already a few smaller snakes turning into monsters. The big monster was still gorging on mushrooms, and its body was starting to change. The black body suddenly looked like a rainbow crystal. The silk-like tentacles shone with refractive clarity. It looked very weird. Han Sen slashed the Jian at the snakes upon the ground, and it achieved nothing. When the purple light hit the snakes, it produced the same result as when it hit the stone wall. Nothing happened. Can this thing really deal with the big monster? Han Sen wondered. The white tiger meowed loudly at Han's senator. It was hurrying him to fight the big monster. Han Sen had to try, so he gritted his teeth and summoned his Peacock King's soul robe. Then, he flew toward the big monster. Before Han Sen reached the monster, it sensed his approach. It turned around and looked at Han's senator. Its body looked like a transparent crystal silkworm, and its hair-like tentacles were wriggling frantically. The tentacles formed together to create wings and a shell to protect the monster. From within its shielding, the monster kept a wary eye on the purple copper Jian in Han Sen's hand. Han Sen saw it and thought, "It looks like this monster is afraid of my purple copper Jian. Maybe the Jian will finally do something?" Setting aside his hesitation, Han Sen used the Jian like he would a knife. He used Fong to slash the monster. The monster didn't use the tentacle shield to block the purple light. Instead, it flapped its wings to evade the strike completely. Han Sen smiled. Before, the monster had felt no need to dodge attacks from him or the little red bird. The enormous creature had simply absorbed their attacks with no ill effects. If it was now putting in the effort to evade the Jian, it must have been afraid of the purple light. "You are afraid. This will be easy," Han Sen said as he continued to swing the Jian. He used his under-the-sky knife skills, and several purple lights became knife silks that covered the whole monster. The monster was unable to dodge the purple light completely, and it raised its tentacle shield to block the portion of the light that it couldn't evade. When the tentacles came into contact with the purple light, it was like ice being thrown onto smoldering charcoal. The tentacles melted, and the purple light went clean through. When the light touched the monster, it left a deep wound behind. The monster gave a weird, high-pitched scream. Han Sen was surprised to find that where the monster had been hurt by the purple light, the tentacles couldn't come back to patch up the damage. "It works." Han Sen was exultant. The purple light continued to shine as it headed for the monster. The purple light didn't deal damage to anything except the monster. The monster had once seemed invincible, but now it was defenseless before the purple copper Jian. It shrieked as the purple light tore its body apart piece by piece. The monster no longer seemed interested in eating the mushrooms of the island. It turned around, intent on returning to the depths of the Black Sea. Han Sen teleported next to the beast, though, and he continued to strike it with the Jian. The monster's form was corroded pretty badly, and as its body started to rot, dead tentacles were strewn over the ground. Through the corroded holes, Han Sen could catch a glimpse of the interior of the monster's body. There was a transparent crystal core inside. It looked like a soft, transparent version of a human head. Han Sen waved the Jian, and the purple light struck the crystal core. The crystal core broke and oozed some sort of sticky liquid. Pang! When the crystal core broke, the monster's body exploded. The body and the tentacles liquefied instantly. Han Sen froze. He hadn't heard the hunting announcement. He didn't hear a single word about a xenogeneic gene nor anything about a beast's soul. The snakes never dropped any items, either. Han Sen had thought they were a part of the big monster, and that killing the big monster would yield a xenogeneic gene and beast soul. However, destroying the big monster had given him nothing. The big monster died, and afterward, the hordes of snakes departed like a receding tide. They all slithered back into the Black Sea, retreating far more quickly than they had attacked. In moments, they had completely disappeared. What were those things? Han Sen's heart was confused. He looked at the purple copper Jian. The Jian was so weird. It only seemed to be capable of affecting the monster he had defeated. There must have been some sort of problem with it. When Han Sen first saw the big monster surrounded by the smaller snakes, he had theorized that they were essentially the same being. If that was true, then the purple copper Jian should have been able to damage the snakes as well as the larger monsters. But Han Sen had tried to strike the snakes many times, and they completely ignored the purple light. Something strange was going on. Han Sen looked at the white tiger. It was likely that only the tiger knew the secrets of the purple copper Jian. But the white tiger had no interest in talking with Han Sen, in addition to the fact that it couldn't talk. Anyway, as this was going on, the white tiger began to chase the remaining snakes off of the island. And as it moved, it released a mushroom rain. When the mushroom spores landed on the snakes, mushrooms would grow on their bodies, sucking the moisture out of the snakes and leaving them as desiccated husks. Although he didn't completely understand what had happened, Han Sen knew that killing the big monster had been a good thing for them. Plus, he had gotten the weird purple copper Jian out of the deal. Once they were rid of the snakes, Han Sen tried talking to the white tiger on numerous occasions. He wanted to know if there was a way out, but he also wanted to learn more about the purple copper Jian. The white tiger would only ever meow twice and shake its head in response. Han Sen couldn't speak the tiger's language, but he understood that the tiger wasn't going to help. Does he not know? Or does he just not want to spill the beans? Han Sen looked at the white tiger and frowned. After that, though, the white tiger was never hostile toward them. It had no intention of harming them now. It would sometimes draw near and listen to whatever they were talking about. Han Sen noticed that the white tiger seemed to be spying on him in particular. It wasn't hostile, but the way its eyes followed him around was quite weird. Han Sen couldn't guess what the white tiger wanted, though. The creature's gaze was neither hostile nor friendly. The way the tiger looked at Han Sen was familiar, but he couldn't tell what was familiar about it. Whatever. As long as he doesn't provoke me. Han Sen put the white tiger out of his mind, and after everything that had happened, he was exhausted. So, he teleported back home. Holding Ji Yin Ran in his arms, he slept until morning. Arg! Before Han Sen woke up, he heard a scream. It shocked him out of his slumber. He looked at Ji Yin Ran and nervously said, "Darling, what happened? Is there an enemy?" You, Ji Yin Ran stammered, standing on the bed and pointing at Han Sen with her eyes wide. She said, "You," 3 times, but she couldn't say anything more. What happened? Han Sen was shocked, so he quickly looked down at his body. Han Sen was wearing shorts, and he was topless. His muscles were like wet steel. His body was perfect. What's the problem with perfection? My body is still super fit. Did the fact that I've become even more handsome scare you? Han Sen posed before her, flexing cockily. Your head. Ji Yin Ran pointed at Han Sen's head with her eyes wide open. I told you before, when we were in Black Hole Spider's belly, mushrooms grew on our heads. I removed it before I came back. Has it come back already? Han Sen asked, and then he touched his head. He froze, his hands still on his head. What is this? Han Sen felt something very soft under his fingers. Han Sen thought of something bad. He teleported in front of Ji Yin Ran's dressing table and looked at himself. Han Sen stared at his reflection, thunderstruck. There was no mushroom on his head, but instead, he was sporting purple fox ears. What the hell are these? Han Sen asked aloud with shock. Han Sen quickly tried to pull the ears off, but pain lanced through his head as he tugged at them. The purple ears seemed to be a part of him. Arg! You're back, Ji Yin Ran screamed. Her eyes were now focused lower on Han Sen's body. Han Sen was given another fright, and so he looked behind himself. There, he saw a hairy purple tail. It looked very soft. What the hell is happening? Han Sen used his Dongxian area to check out his body. There was nothing wrong with him, as far as he could tell. It was like his ears and tail were now a part of his body. Ji Yinran's eyes opened wide, and she approached Han Senator. She looked frozen as she stared at him. Don't be afraid, my darling. This is just a small problem. Don't worry, I'll sort it out right now, Han Sen comforted Ji Yinran. It's so cute. Ji Yinran screamed happily. She hugged him and fondled his fox ears. Linger heard the commotion, and she rubbed her eyes and sat up. When she saw Han Sen, she looked so happy. She jumped atop Han Sen's back and grabbed one of his fox ears while she said, "Daddy, it's so cute." "Cute, my asterisk S?" Han Sen felt humiliated. He put Linger in Ji Yinran's arms and turned his attention back to finding out what was going on. He had only just gone to sleep, and he had woken up this way. Han Sen used all sorts of powers to try to learn more about this issue, but no matter what method he tried, the fox ears and tail weren't a part of his body. There was no way to remove them. With his fitness and recovery powers, even if he tore them off by force, they would grow back. "Honey, if you can't get rid of them, it's okay to keep them," Ji Yinran said with a smile. Yes, you can." Linger agreed fervently, holding her bottle as she looked at Han Senator. She kept nodding as she sipped from her bottle. "Honey, you shouldn't hurt your body. Just keep it like this," Ji Yinran said. Yes, keep them." Linger followed with a nod. "Your parents gave you this body, so you should cherish it." Yes. Don't do anything stupid. No matter what you become, we will both love you. You should stop touching them." Yes, we love you." The two of them kept smiling as they tried to convince Han Sen, who was currently feeling as if he was in a very dire situation. "The Jinn, it must be the purple copper Jinn. I was fine before, and this only happened when I retrieved this thing." Han Sen pulled the purple copper Jinn from Destiny's tower. There was nothing weird about it, though. The weapon rested quietly in Han Sen's hands. The symbols didn't react in any way, but Han Sen noticed something unusual. His fox ears and tail were the same purple color as the Jinn. This must be happening because of the Jinn. Han Sen gritted his teeth, but no matter how long he spent trying to find out what the precise problem was, he couldn't figure it out. That made Han Sen feel very unsettled. Most of Han Sen's discomfort was because of what had happened to Ningyu. The man had been ruined by the green sword that he found. What happened to him was scary, and Han Sen was now worried that the purple copper Jinn would ruin him as well. Ningyu's personality and body had been wholly changed. He now seemed almost entirely like a woman. Han Sen was afraid he would end up transformed into a purple fox or something. He wasn't going to let that happen. Han Sen suddenly thought of the white tiger's face and why it looked so familiar. He realized that he had recognized the expression. The white tiger looked at him in the same way he looked at Ningyu. That D***MN tiger knew something like this was going to happen. Han Sen felt so angry. Han Sen couldn't figure out a solution to this dilemma, though. Han Sen then used his super god spirit body. He wanted to use the invincible powers of the super god spirit body to rid himself of any debilitating effects. After Han Sen used his super god spirit body, the fox ears and tail suddenly burned away. It made Han Sen let out a big sigh of relief. "It is lucky I have a super god spirit body. I won't end up like Ningyu with this," Han Sen said, pounding his chest. When Ji Yinran and Linger saw that Han Sen's foxtail and ears were gone, they looked disappointed. It was like they had lost their favorite toy. Han Sen didn't care about their disappointment, though. He didn't like looking weird. After deactivating the super god spirit body, he stroked his head and touched his behind. Everything was okay now. He felt much safer. But Han Sen's joy was short-lived. When he went for a walk with Linger later that day, the people in the street started pointing at him. One girl giggled hysterically. A worried sensation began to gnaw at Han Sen's stomach. He touched his head, and he realized that the fox ears had suddenly grown back. The tail was back as well, lifting his clothes awkwardly. Han Sen's face changed. Linger, on the other hand, was happy. She sat on Han Sen's shoulder, playing with the ears with one in each hand. She kept rubbing them, looking delighted. Han Sen quickly flew to a place with no one around. And then, he teleported home. He used his super god spirit body to rid himself of the queer physical attributes. Without hesitation, Han Sen immediately teleported back to the Geno universe. He threw the purple copper Jinn into the Black Sea. Once he made sure that the purple copper Jinn had sunk below the waves, he returned to the sanctuaries. Not long after, Han Sen noticed that the purple copper jian was attached to the belt on his waist. How is that possible? Han Sen was shocked. He was now in the sanctuaries, and yet the purple copper jian had somehow reappeared next to him. It was unbelievable. The purple copper jian had only been with him for a matter of seconds, and already his ears and tail were growing again. Han Sen tried to get rid of the jian many times. However, even if he placed the weapon on a planet inside the core area, he wouldn't be rid of it for long. In a short amount of time, it would reappear next to him. Now Han Sen knew he had suffered a misfortune that was similar to Ning Yu's. A weird weapon was stuck with him, and there was nothing he could do to get rid of it. Now Han Sen regretted his recent choices. He shouldn't have taken the purple copper jian. If he had known this was going to happen, he would have allowed Gu Qingqing or Elysian Moon to take and wield it. It was more acceptable for a woman to have fox ears and a tail. It was too late to think of that now, though. When they saw Han Sen, Gu Qingqing and Elysian Moon tried their best not to laugh. They pretended there was nothing amiss, but Han Sen could sense that they were laughing incredibly hard on the inside. Can anyone tell me what this is? Han Sen asked, throwing the purple copper jian in front of the white tiger. Meow, the white tiger said. It smiled with its moon-like eyes. Han Sen didn't speak the language of beasts, but he could tell it was laughing. F*CKU. Tell me now, what is this? Tell me how to get rid of it. If you don't, I'll skin you alive. Han Sen threatened the white tiger, grabbing it angrily. The white tiger mewed a little, but Han Sen didn't understand what it was trying to tell him. When Han Sen let the creature go, it hurriedly disappeared amidst the rocks. Han Sen couldn't do anything. He made many attempts to separate himself from the weapon, but he couldn't be free of it. But fortunately, the situation didn't become any worse. Aside from the fox ears on his head and the fox tail on his butt, there was nothing else wrong with him. The only silver lining in all this was that the head mushrooms were no longer an issue for Han Senator when the fox tail and ears grew. The mushroom on his head didn't. The mushrooms are gone, but now I have the ears to contend with. What do these things think my brain is? A hotel? Han Sen was very angry, but he had no way of resolving the matter. Dad, you look good like this. Bauer tilted her head to look at Han Sen. I look good, my asterisk. Han Sen grumbled, but he had no choice but to accept it. He couldn't keep on using his super god spirit body every 5 minutes. You'll get used to it. That is what happened to me, Ningyu said quietly. Han Sen looked over at Ningyu's girly appearance. He felt a chill as he thought, no way. I must get rid of this crap. I can't end up like Ningyu. Despite Han Sen's determination, reality seemed set on disappointing him. The real world was cruel. Han Sen used many methods to try to free himself from the fox ears and tail, but nothing seemed to work. That day, Han Sen ransacked his mind for ideas on how to get rid of his fox-like features. Suddenly, he saw a strong shift in the fabric of space. A scary purple knife air broke through the mist and cut through the air around him. Teeth power. Is that? Seeing that knife air, Han Sen was shocked. Only one other person could use teeth power in such a frightening way. A second after the display of knife air, Han Sen saw someone drop through the air to land on the island. That person was clad in purple armor. It was Isha, and as she landed in a crouch, she looked like a bad asterisk. Teacher. Han Sen was so happy. He never expected to see Isha there. There is no time. Follow me, Isha said coldly. Her face didn't show much in the way of emotion, but Han Sen knew that it must have taken a lot of effort for Isha to come all the way to get him. Han Sen could even see that Isha's armor was riddled with many cuts and dents. He was so touched. Isha was his teacher, but not many teachers would be willing to break into the black hole spider's belly to save their students. Han Sen quickly gathered his people to board the white whale. Then he followed Isha through the mist. Isha's expression remained impassive. Her knife unleashed teeth powers that spread through the endless mist. Isha was bringing Han Sen and the others with her. They followed the crack in space that Teeth Knife created. When everyone saw the skies of the systems of chaos, they all looked happy. Han Sen looked around as they emerged, but he couldn't see a black hole spider anywhere. The space crack they had just exited hung like a rift in the sky. Once they fully left the rift, a short knife flew out behind them. That knife was shaped like a dagger that was only 1 foot long. It was curved like a crescent moon and white like a fong. Space distorted around the small weapon as it moved. Isha was holding a curved scabbard. When the fong-like knife reached her, she slid it into the scabbard and attached the scabbard to her waist. The space crack lost the support of her teeth knife, and in seconds, it had collapsed and disappeared entirely. Master, what kind of knife is that? Why is its presence so familiar to me? Han Sen couldn't help but ask Isha. That moon-like teeth knife had teeth powers, and they certainly weren't ordinary teeth powers. This is the knife that belonged to my race's alpha. It is called break space teeth. If I hadn't had this knife to open the space tunnel to get to you, it would have been impossible for me to get into the black hole spider's belly to save you, Isha said, her face impassive. Teacher, how did you know we were inside the black hole spider's belly? Han Sen had been wondering this since she first appeared. Even though she had break space teeth, which could open a space tunnel, Isha would have needed to know where Han Sen was before she could jump to him. How could she have so accurately leaped into the black hole spider's stomach to save him? If she had made the tiniest mistake, such as opening a space tunnel inside the gruesome flesh of the black hole spider and alerting the gross fiend, Isha would have probably met a grisly end. She wouldn't have been saving anybody. While no one else knows of your return, let us head to Sky Palace, Isha said simply. She didn't answer Han Sen's question. If Isha wasn't going to answer, then there was no point in Han Sen asking her again. He continued to follow Isha as she traveled through the systems of chaos. With Isha there, leading the way, their path was much safer. Han Sen had unlocked the 9th tier of his Blood Pulse Sutra during his time inside the black hole spider's belly. The story of genes had been leveled up, too. It was just as Han Sen expected. As the story of Gene's area increased, the strength of his body increased along with it. His connection with the black crystal armor had also become clearer and more defined. If I become half deified, will I be able to manually activate the black crystal armor? Han Sen wondered. The white tiger followed them out. It flew along with them, not looking as if it wanted to leave. It was weird. When they left the black hole spider's belly, the mushrooms on their heads died and didn't grow back. But the white tiger's head still had a mushroom on it, and that mushroom showed no signs of dying. Everyone else, however, was quite pleased to see their mushrooms shrivel and fall away. It was as if a weight had been lifted off their shoulders as a grand crisis was resolved. But Isha looked at the white tiger and said, "Inside the black hole spider's belly, nothing below the rank of deified can survive. If you all survive this long, you should be thanking the mushrooms you were given." Han Sen and the others were shocked. They had viewed their mushrooms as something of a curse. They had never realized that the mushrooms were protecting them. They looked at Isha with a gaze of disbelief. "You think it's that easy to live inside the black hole spider's belly?" Isha asked sternly. "There are scary powers in there that you couldn't even see. The powers in that place are like viruses that can invade the bodies of anything. They break down entire creatures into nothing but raw nutrients to feed the black hole spider. Without a deified body, it is impossible to withstand or even notice those powers before it is too late. Even with a deified body, survival is not guaranteed. The mushrooms that the big white cat placed on your heads are the only reason you guys were able to survive there for the duration you did." When Han Sen heard Isha say this, he suddenly had a flashback to the information he discovered inside the broken battleship. He thought to himself, when that woman conducted the test that we saw, was it to allow the white cat to survive there? If what Isha says is true, then it seems pretty likely. The mushroom on the white cat was probably invented by that woman. It was a vaccine to resist the viruses that would have otherwise ravaged the white tiger's body. We were saved by it. Han Sen wasn't sure if vaccine was the right word to describe a mushroom with magical healing powers, but he decided to go with it. So, ever since we first arrived in that place, the white tiger was sustaining our lives. Without it, even if I survived, everyone else would have died. But how did that woman get inside the black hole spider's belly in the first place? And why did she leave by herself, leaving the white tiger behind? Han Sen really wanted to find that woman and ask her, but he had no clue where she might be found. Ever since they parted ways in Two World Mountains, he never heard from her again. "What is up with you?" Isha asked, looking at Han Sen's head. Bauer was sitting on Han Sen's shoulders, playing idly with Han Sen's fox ears. She kept squeezing them. She seemed to be having a lot of fun with them. Han Sen told Isha about what had happened in the tunnels under the island, and when Isha heard what he said, she looked stunned. "Let me see the Jian." Han Sen brought out the purple copper Jian to show Isha. Isha didn't take it into her hands, but after a while, she nodded and said, "That's it. That is the fox's race weapon." "It's a race weapon?" Han Sen didn't understand. He had never heard that term before. Isha sighed and said, "Right now, not many know about race weapons. In ancient times, all the races that lit up a Geno lantern were able to make a gene weapon with the fire of the lantern. That race weapon would be fused with the genes of the race that forged it. It would gain incredible power and become a very special weapon. Some strong race weapons are like true god-level deified weapons. They might even be stronger. But each gene lantern can only ever forge one race weapon. The first person that lights up the lantern receives the weapon. If they light up the gene lantern again, they won't get another. Stealing a race weapon is the only way to get a second one. So, right now, not many creatures know about race weapons. Even if they encountered one, most people would just think it was a powerful deified weapon. After a brief pause, Isha said, "The fox's race weapon is called 9-spin Destiny Mirror, but from what I know, it was a race weapon that the foxes stole. It didn't originally belong to them. I have heard that their real race weapon, the one they received when they lit their lantern, is the purple copper Jian. I've never seen it myself, but I think that might be it." Han Sen was thrilled to hear that, because the 9-spin Destiny Mirror was also in his hands. He just didn't know how to use the 9-spin Destiny Mirror. He heard from Fox Queen that the 9-spin Destiny Mirror only worked for foxes who became deified. He didn't know if that was the truth. "Teacher, is there a way to remove this ailment of mine?" Han Sen looked at Isha, his eyes full of hope. She knew where the purple copper Jian came from, so she must have known a way to fix it. "Race weapons are deified as soon as they are created," Isha said, shaking her head. "They are smarter than the average deified weapon. They are stronger, too. If the weapon was used by a creature from the race that created it, the weapon would be incredibly beneficial to them. There wouldn't be any such side effects. If it was activated by someone of another race, however, they would adopt the traits and powers of the race the weapon belongs to. Their bodies would be invaded by the race's genes, which would turn them into something weird. Unless you gain enough power to overwhelm the race weapon, you won't be able to hold off its effects." "Is there no other way?" Han Sen asked with depression. "Well, I can't say with certainty that there isn't some way to be rid of its influence. If there was an elite that could use force to suppress the power of the race weapon and erase the fox genes within it, perhaps your genes could be placed in the weapon instead. You could probably get rid of the gene weapon side effects that way. It is like the fox's 9-spin Destiny Mirror. A scary fox elite erased the original genes inside the mirror and replaced them with his own. That way, it became a race weapon of the fox." Isha paused and said, "But the genes of the foxes are very good. I have heard that when they lit up their gene lantern, their ranking was quite high. This purple copper Jian's power might indeed be true god class. Unless you can find a true god class elite that is willing to spend some energy wanting to help you, there is no other way. Does that mean I'm done for?" Han Sen looked as if he was going to cry. He didn't have a true god deified to help him. He didn't know of any to begin with. Even if he did, there was no reason for someone else to expend so much effort erasing the fox genes inside the purple copper Jian on his behalf. "You look quite good the way you are," Isha said. Then, she continued flying. It took a while for Han Sen to wake up from his disheartened daze. Han Sen equipped glasses to hide his face, then used the item to inspect Isha's genes. The numbers on the display kept cycling. It took a while for her details to be produced. The rebate wasn't a very rich race, but Isha's gene potential was at 8 stars. If the potential is 8 stars, then that means she can become a butterfly. If she wants to become a true god, a grand opportunity will need to come her way and offer her a boost. It is a shame my Blood Pulse Sutra is only king class right now. I can't boost the genes of a deified. If I could, I'd definitely help Isha perfect her genes. That way, she would have a greater chance of becoming a true god, Han Sen thought to himself. Before, Han Sen had tried to use the power of the Blood Pulse Sutra on the little red bird, but it didn't work. His King-class Blood Pulse Sutra was unable to push the self-cogwheel of a deified being. Han Sen looked at the white tiger. He noticed that its potential was the same as the small crocodile god. It was 9 stars. Han Sen asked Isha to look at Ning Yu's little green sword. She was unable to determine what sort of weapon it was, but judging from what had happened to him, it was likely a race weapon. Which race exactly? She didn't know. The white whale had almost fully recovered. Han Sen invited Isha to ride inside the white whale, and it was an offer she didn't refuse. The group rode inside the white whale for the remainder of their journey to Sky Palace. They didn't see elites from any other races as they traveled through the systems of chaos. They often encountered space xenogenics, though, and luckily, Isha was there to help them in such engagements. With Han Sen and the little red bird's deified powers, they were in no danger. That white tiger slept inside the ship day and night. It didn't lend them any power, or look as if it was willing to lift a finger to help out. The white whale was flying forward as it usually did when suddenly, a group of ships appeared. The sight made Han Sen and the others feel a chill. Spring rain, Han Sen said when he recognized the symbols on the battleships. It was spring rain, the group of agents that Miss Mirror commanded. Of course, when those battleships surrounded the white whale, a man and a woman came out of the lead ship. The woman was Miss Mirror. The man was the 4th uncle, Meng Lai. We just exited the black hole spider not too long ago. Why are they already here? Han Sen was shocked. Han Sen, do you want to come with us peacefully? Or are we going to have to drag you back? Meng Lai asked with a laugh. Han Sen remained silent. Although they had 3 deifieds in their midst for combat, they were each of the lowest class. They were primitive deifieds. Miss Mirror was a primitive deified, but she had been deified for longer. Her powers were weird, and she would be hard to deal with. Meng Lai could certainly be a transmutation deified. Even Lando, who became deified, had been unable to defeat him. Fighting him would be harder than dealing with Miss Mirror. But Han Sen had no choice now. He put on his Peacock King soul robe, equipped his 6-core snake bow, and exited alongside the little red bird. Isha came out, as well. She quietly stood next to Han Sen. Miss Mirror looked at Isha and said, "Knife Queen, the rebate have always sided with the Extreme King. You aren't going to destroy our long-standing relationship merely for Han Sen, are you? The rebate already has an alliance with Sky Palace," Isha said flatly. "I'm willing to be friendly with the Extreme King, but if you people keep trying to get in my way, then I have no other choice." When Han Sen first went on the run, Isha was slow to act because she was dealing with the politics of the rebate. She couldn't get the whole of the rebate involved simply to save Han Sen. Now, though, the rebate had entered an alliance with Sky Palace. They had the protection of Sky Palace. It would be troublesome for the Extreme King to dare touch them. Knife Queen, you need to rethink this. Is all of this worth it? Is it worth betraying us on behalf of your student? You know how traitors to the Extreme King are dealt with. Meng Lai frowned. If I cannot protect my student, then what use is there for the rebate to even exist? Isha growled. I would like to see what benefits Sky Palace offered that have given you the courage to flat-out deny the will of the Extreme King. Miss Mirror's face was hard as she raised her hand and moved to attack Isha. Isha didn't move, but she pulled out her short-teeth knife to attack Miss Mirror. Meng Lai sighed. His body turned to gold, and then he pressed his hands down on the lion mount he rode upon. The gold color dyed the lion. The next second, Meng Lai waved his hand. The golden lion rose, turning into a golden knife that resembled the head of a lion. I didn't want to kill you, but you just won't stay put. Meng Lai lifted the knife that looked like the head of a lion and approached Han Senator. Each step he took was like he was crushing the whole world. It felt like the whole galaxy had become smaller in his presence. Meng Lai was coming like a golden god. The little red bird shrieked at him as a phoenix fire blazed across it. It became a beautiful fire burning next to Han Sen, and it unleashed a scary sea of flames. The sky was full of fire, and it was all headed for Meng Lai. Meng Lai swung his knife, and the sea of fire parted like it had been cut with a pair of scissors. The fire fell away to either side of the man and faded. A cold, golden knife light suddenly flew toward the little red bird. If the little red bird hadn't dodged the attack in time, it would have been cut in half. Meng Lai is so powerful. His gold soldier body is very strong. Han Sen couldn't help but compliment his opponent. Meng Lai was a transmutation deified, and when he turned another deified xenogeneic into a soldier, his strength had grown. A primitive deified would have a hard time taking him down. Han Sen's body shone with rainbow light. Between his fingers, he held an arrow that was infused with rainbow light. He pulled back the string of the six-core snake bow and fired the arrow at Meng Lai. The moment the rainbow light arrow left Han Sen's fingers, it disappeared. When it appeared again, Meng Lai's golden lion head knife hit the arrow of rainbow light. It broke the light arrow with ease, which shocked Han Sen. Meng Lai had somehow seen the arrow as it teleported. He had broken the arrow easily. A power like that was terrifying. Transmutation class powers are that scary? Then how strong must a true god be?
Han Sen sighed.
Meng Lai came slashing at Han Sen like a golden god spirit that was dominating the whole sky. That knife consumed all of space. It made Han Sen feel as if he couldn't dodge. If Han Sen practiced the real god's wander, he could teleport anywhere he wished to. He could have teleported far away from that golden knife light. But with his current skills, such techniques were beyond him. His eyes were like lightning as he pulled out his purple copper jian. He used a stance that would allow him to blow up the sky. Pang! A knife silk was broken by the scary golden god light. Han Sen and the purple copper jian flew away. The purple copper jian shook violently, and Han Sen's arms were almost cut off. The muscles in his hands were delivered a deep laceration, and his bones could be seen through the wound. Huh? You blocked my knife and didn't shatter. That is quite a good deified weapon. How many deified weapons do you possess? Meng Lai looked at the purple copper jian in Han Sen's hand with complete surprise. Han Sen didn't answer him. He frowned and looked at the purple copper jian. Does this guy's power only work against enemies in the black hole spider's stomach? The purple copper jian was a race weapon. It was as good as a weapon of the true god rank. But now, the purple copper jian seemed a little underwhelming. Han Sen expected this, though. He hadn't yet figured out what sort of power the purple copper jian possessed, so its real power hadn't yet been displayed. In addition, Han Sen's power was simply too weak. He couldn't use the jian's full power to block Meng Lai's strike, and it didn't even look like the fourth uncle had been trying all that hard. Han Sen, you should know that my first strike was just me going easy on you. If you still don't understand, then the next attack won't be so gentle, Meng Lai said, word by word, as he approached Han Sen. Everything that existed trembled under the booming of his voice. Even Han Sen's body shook a little. Han Sen wasn't shaking because he was afraid, though. It was his natural reaction to facing a strong enemy. He was so hyped in the middle of combat that it released all of his hidden power, building more and more energy within him. This was the biggest fight he'd had in years, and his only choice was to win. Losing wasn't an option. If he lost, then all the people following him would be killed, too. Han Sen looked at Meng Lai, who had come forward like a god. His purple-eye butterfly spun like mad. Before Meng Lai attacked again, Glasses was bringing up the man's test results. Target: Extreme King Male. Gene age calculation: 12,300 years. Gene level: Transmutation deified. Gene potential: 8 stars. Han Sen was shocked. It seemed as if the gene potential level was trickier than he had expected. Even an Extreme King Transmutation deified only had 8 stars. The stars of a lower race were bound to be lower. So, Isha's 8 stars were actually quite impressive. Right now, though, Han Sen didn't care how many stars Meng Lai had. The man's potential wasn't something that mattered right now. At the moment, Meng Lai was simply a transmutation deified enemy that he had to get rid of. Target: Lion Male. Gene age calculation: 163,000 years. Gene level: Primitive deified. Gene potential: 6 stars. This was the data of the deified xenogeneic that had been turned into a knife that resembled the head of a gold lion. Its data didn't mean anything, though. Under the influence of Meng Lai's gold soldier body, the xenogeneic had been transformed into a knife and gained more power than ever before. BZZD. Another strike was on its way. The gold sword light tore through the universe, effortlessly cutting through the fabric of space. Han Sen's eyes flashed red, and his whole body turned red as well. The moment the golden knife light landed, it disappeared. Meng Lai frowned. He didn't look around, though. He knew exactly where Han Sen was. He used his left hand to gouge his own eye. Pang! Meng Lai's eye exploded. It was a self-inflicted blow, and a stream of golden, godlike blood gushed out. Han Sen fell out with it. Han Sen had made use of his blood-eye evil god's power to fire himself into Meng Lai's eye. He hadn't realized that Meng Lai would be so brutally efficient. He was happy to poke and obliterate his eye, which sent Han Sen rolling out. Han Sen, spare me these tricks. They won't work on the likes of me. Meng Lai's eye was still bleeding golden blood, but the flow of blood had been reduced dramatically. The wound wasn't healed, however, which prevented Han Sen from re-entering the eye with his blood-eye evil god. He had been blinded, but Meng Lai was still able to watch Han Senator. It was like he could see every move that Han Sen made. He moved the gold lion head knife, and the gold knife light that could destroy the most ancient things surged toward Han Senator. It was so suppressive. It was like the whole galaxy was going to snap. The Peacock King robe had its wings open. A rainbow substance chain surrounded Han Senator. It connected with the purple copper gem, which Han Sen then used as an arrow with the 6-core snake bow. Facing this scary gold knife light, Han Sen pulled back the string of the 6-core snake bow. He fired the purple copper gem. The purple copper gem disappeared in a hazy rainbow light. When it reappeared, it slammed into the scary gold knife light. Han Sen wasn't worried about the purple copper gem breaking. Race weapons weren't that easy to break, after all. And even if it did break, Han Sen wouldn't be very upset about that. He didn't want his new ears or tail anyway. Pang! The purple copper gem and the gold god light collided. It was like a sun had just exploded. It created a scary shockwave that destroyed everything around them. Han Sen watched that grand explosion. The purple copper gem came back, spinning like a flaming wheel. Han Sen grabbed it, and he marveled at how there wasn't a single scratch on it. Meng Lai stared at the purple copper gem, his eyes blank with shock. He had used so much power that time, but even so, that O-ring-looking purple copper gem had blown up his knife light without incurring any damage. That was unbelievable. Is this another deified weapon like the shield of the Medusa's gaze? Meng Lai looked at Han Sen's purple copper gem. Han Sen looked at his mint-condition purple copper gem with joy. I don't know what the true power of the purple copper gem is, but it seems pretty good. It can block Meng Lai's knife lights. As Han Sen thought this, he put the purple copper gem back against the string of the 6-core snake bow and aimed at Meng Lai. Han Sen fired the purple copper gem like an arrow once more. This time, he put even more power into it. The moment the gem left the string of the 6-core snake bow, it teleported and disappeared. Teleportation won't work against me unless you can teleport without causing a ripple in the fabric of space, Meng Lai said coldly. And then, he reached his hand out into the air. The purple copper gem emerged from space and appeared right where Meng Lai had placed his hand. He grabbed it. This time, Meng Lai didn't use the lion head knife to try to break it. He used his hand to clutch the purple copper gem. He wanted to hold it and get a better look at what sort of deified weapon it was. But when Meng Lai's hand was just about to close around the purple copper gem managed to leave its flight path and vanish from Meng Lai's vision once more. When Meng Lai saw the purple copper gem again, the weapon was protruding from his chest. That arrow wasn't bad, Meng Lai said, completely unconcerned about the blow that had landed on him. Based on how Han Sen's arrow interacted with his gold knife light, Meng Lai was confident that it wouldn't damage his gold soldier body. But after he finished talking, Meng Lai's face changed. He looked down and saw that the purple copper gem had perforated his heart. Golden god blood slowly dribbled out of his body. How is that possible? Meng Lai couldn't believe his eyes. It shouldn't be possible to hurt his gold soldier body with an ordinary deified weapon, and on top of that, Han Sen was only king class. Even if Han Sen used a deified weapon, he shouldn't have been able to break Meng Lai's gold soldier body. The pain that stemmed from the wound in his chest told the extreme king that his injury was real, not some sort of illusion. Unless a possibility crossed Meng Lai's mind. His eyelids flickered. Instead of trying to fight back, he grabbed the handle of the purple copper jian. Unless this is a butterfly deified weapon, and that was how he was able to break my gold soldier body. Meng Lai's eyes burned brightly. He pulled the purple copper jian out of his chest. When the purple copper jian slid free, the wound in his chest healed. He recovered swiftly, and no mark remained. When Han Sen watched the purple copper jian puncture Meng Lai's heart, he was happy. But his optimism was short-lived, and watching this next bit made him frown. He had to marvel at just how strong these deified elites really were. Thank you for giving me a powerful deified weapon. If you are being this generous, how about you give me the shield of the Medusa's gaze too? Meng Lai held the purple copper jian and erupted with a gold god light. Waves of gold energy enveloped the purple copper jian, dyeing the purple copper jian a gold color. The gold soldier king body could turn deified beings into gold weapons. The skill worked on deified weapons, too. It couldn't change the element of deified weapons, but Meng Lai was able to claim and use many different kinds of deified weapons. As the purple copper jian was turning gold, Meng Lai's face suddenly changed. He saw that the purple copper jian was no longer changing. Instead, it was reverting to purple. The mysterious engravings upon the jian suddenly lit up and blasted Meng Lai's hand away. How is that possible? Is this a true god weapon? Meng Lai looked at his hand. The portion of his flesh that had touched the purple copper jian was no longer gleaming gold. It was just his skin. A deified weapon, which no one was controlling, had destroyed a section of his gold soldier power. It was unbelievable. Meng Lai raised his head. His fiery eyes were locked on the purple copper jian in Han Sen's hand. He smiled and said, "A true god weapon. It is a true god weapon. Han Sen, you are a man of great luck. You have 2 true god weapons. Many deified elites would weep and beg for just one. You are only a king, and yet you have 2. If you know that I have great luck, why must you insist on troubling me all the time? Isn't what you're doing against the will of the gods?" Han Sen asked coldly as he lifted the purple copper jian. Meng Lai laughed. The gold god light was bright in his hands. He spread his gold power back over the hand whose light had been extinguished, laughed, and said, "The path to evolution has us all fighting against the sky. Everyone's evolution is built on the broken bones of their opponents. What you eat and what you use comes from the creatures of lesser fortunate universal beings. If you don't try to fight your way higher, you will be *T on the road for other creatures to consume. If things were not like that, why would I be afraid of the things that hold me back? You have good luck. In that case, I will steal your luck for my benefit. With these 2 true god weapons, the Extreme King will grow even more powerful in the future. That is my luck and the Extreme King's luck." Meng Lai continued to cast his gold god light. The entire system turned to gold. Even the system rang with a godly hymn, and the world kept trembling without reprieve. It was like the world was answering what he had just said. Although Han Sen was Meng Lai's enemy, he had to admit that the man was quite right. In that universe, a blade of grass, a log of wood, a stone, a drop of water, all of them held life. Whether you were an extreme king or a human, if you wanted to live, you would have to do it by standing on the blood and bones of others. If success was merely a matter of luck, then fighting to better yourself would be pointless. You might as well dig a hole and bury yourself. You are right. Han Sen's eyes looked clear. The purple copper jian was on the 6-core snake bow again. Han Sen pushed his jade skin, blood pulse sutra, and the peacock king's soul robe to the max. The flesh of Han Sen's whole body seemed to vibrate with strength. Blood surged and roared through his vessels, and his heart was like a generator that could not stop spinning. His body began to swell, and he looked very excited. The feather robe gleamed with rainbow light, which spread to cover the purple copper jian. The purple copper jian's marks seemed to brighten under its touch. It was like they were turning into mysterious symbols of light that surrounded the purple copper jian. Even the ears on Han Sen's head and the tail on his back glowed with a purple light. Seeing Han Sen and the purple copper jian, Meng Lai's excitement was through the roof. He shouted, "Now I understand. I finally understand. That weapon belongs to the foxes. It is Cupid's jian. No wonder it was able to damage by gold soldier body. Cupid's Jian? What on earth? Han Sen thought that name was so weird. Meng Lai laughed and said, Cupid's Jian is also called the charming god's Jian. I thought it was destroyed when the Fox Elder went to the Geno Hall. I cannot believe it still exists, and it is now in your possession. God is helping the Extreme King on this day. With the charming god Jian, the reputation of the Extreme King will only increase. Meng Lai was so excited. He looked at the purple copper Jian with his blinded eye and summoned gold light. It sounds like you know something about the charming god's Jian, but do you know what power it has? Han Sen's heart leaped at the possibility. Meng Lai might be able to tell him the type of power the purple copper Jian possessed. Meng Lai looked at Han Sen as if he knew what he was thinking, but he still said, I'm afraid you will be disappointed. The charming god's Jian is the strongest race weapon in existence, and it is also the weakest race weapon in existence. It is strong because it has the power to supercharge a person's charm. The Fox Alpha used it to attract everyone. If it was used well, it could make 1,000 races obey that alpha. I also say it is weak because its powers of simple destruction are bad. It won't help you now. So, you were saying it has no attack power, and therefore it is useless? Han Sen didn't believe him. He fired at Meng Lai. A shockwave was created in space, and with it, the purple copper Jian disappeared. When Han Sen had used the purple copper Jian to defeat the monster in the black hole spider's belly, it had revealed its true strength. Han Sen didn't believe it lacked destructive powers. Pang! When Han Sen's attack reappeared, Meng Lai slashed at the Jian. His strike came against the purple copper Jian. Han Sen's face changed. Both of his hands moved to grab the purple copper Jian, but the weapon's power was still active. Han Sen tried his hardest to hold its grip, but the purple copper Jian struck his chest. He was sent flying, like an asteroid striking a planet. He was pinned to a mountain. Han Sen lowered his head and looked at the purple copper Jian in his chest. That Jian had previously pierced through Meng Lai's chest, but he didn't expect karma would repay the same strike so soon. Han Sen clutched the handle of the Jian and tried to pull it out. But before he could use any strength, Meng Lai's gold, godly body appeared. He attacked with his gold lion head knife. His scary gold knife light looked like it was going to cut the planet in half. The little red bird screeched like a phoenix. The fire in its mouth became a sea of angry flames that rained down on Meng Lai. It tried to stop Meng Lai casting that knife light to destroy Han Sen. But the little red bird was still only primitive, and the knife in Meng Lai's right hand had the same level of power. His right hand turned that power into a shield that covered the sky. It extinguished the little red bird's fire. Seeing this, Miss Mirror sighed. In the end, Han Sen still needs to die. It would have been okay if he had just killed Bai Yi. He might have still been allowed to live. But now that he has the true god shield of the Medusa's gaze and the race weapon of the fox, he must die. Boom. A scary gold knife light appeared, and the whole planet exploded. The destruction caused by the gold knife light was so bright that the entire galaxy shone with its radiance. Shockwaves washed through the system. Han Sr., Isha was engaged with Miss Mirror, so she couldn't go and help. When she saw that explosion of power, her face fell. Captain, it is all over. Far away, inside the white whale, all of the pirates were shocked. Their faces looked cold. Even a deified would have died if they were hit by that much power. Plus, Han Sen wasn't deified. He only used treasures of that class. The pirates were thinking about whether or not they should kneel and beg. If they did, they might be permitted to live. On the other hand, the captured Extreme King Knights inside the white whale were delighted.
Han Sen is dead.
You guys are next, one of the Extreme King Knights said menacingly to a pirate. Aina. Slap. The Extreme King Knight who said that was smacked to the floor. Bauer then went to clean her hand, as if she had touched something dirty. The Extreme King Knight was rolling around on the floor, clutching his injured face. His teeth had been broken and his jaw had been shattered. The other Extreme King Knights didn't say anything more. They had almost forgotten that the little demon was still on board the ship. Bauer looked at the Extreme King Knights. They all lowered their heads, not daring to meet her gaze. My dad won't die, Bauer said with disdain. Then, she looked back out into space. The extreme King Knights didn't say anything to the contrary, but they thought to themselves, Han Sen only has a few deified weapons. How could he possibly compete with Menglai? He will be dead. And up next will be you, you little demon. After a while, the power shining around the wreckage of the planet began to dim. And then, Feng Qingyu suddenly shouted, Han Sen isn't dead. The pirates and the extreme King Knights looked over there. They couldn't believe their eyes. They saw Han Sen suspended in space, holding a shield that had protected his body. Due to the fact that the planet had exploded, his armor and feathers were a little blackened. But he hadn't been badly wounded. The worst wound he had was the wound delivered by the purple copper gem, which was in his chest. I forgot you have the shield of the Medusa's gaze, but the Medusa's gaze isn't a race weapon. It isn't smart enough. It won't follow your orders, and you cannot use it like the charming god's Jin. It would be annoying if it did. Meng Lai's eyes were on fire as he looked down at the shield of the Medusa's gaze. Han Sen coughed, and a trickle of blood spilled over his lips. He looked at Meng Lai coldly and said, "Are you sure I cannot use it?" The shield of the Medusa's gaze was the true god weapon of the Alpha of the Ghana, Meng Lai said with a sneer. Back then, it was a deified weapon that was in the top 10 in existence. Its power was comparable to the Ghana's race weapon Purgatory Heaven. But there is a big difference between true god weapons and race weapons. Race weapons are their own life forms, in a way. They can think for themselves and make judgments. If they approve of a user, then the user can still activate their power, even if the creature's level is low. But true god weapons are different. Without true god powers, you cannot make use of a true god weapon's power. If a low-level deified has the same element as the true god weapon, they can use a little of its power. But you aren't deified, and your power isn't compatible with the shield of the Medusa's gaze. So, you cannot activate its power. You cannot tap into January 10th, 000th of its power. You can only use it as an ordinary shield. It is a shame that the shield of the Medusa's gaze is a shield. Despite that, its power doesn't lie in defense. Meng Lai said all of this, and then he generated a scary gold power. The gold lion head knife now possessed a godlight that shocked the whole world. It was like the universe was going to be cut in half by this godlight. Seeing that Meng Lai was going to unleash that knife light, Han Sen's face didn't change. He still held the shield of the Medusa's gaze tight. As he watched that seemingly all-powerful knife light form, the power in his body madly rushed into the shield of the Medusa's gaze. There was a weird, pretty-looking woman carved atop the shield. Suddenly, a light appeared in her closed eyes. Impossible. Meng Lai's face changed as he saw the eyes of the woman atop Han Sen's shield begin to glow. His face grew pale. When the Ghana entered the Geno Hall long ago, they hadn't needed to fight in order to light a lantern. At that point in history, there were many Geno lanterns that remained unlit. But that didn't mean that the Ghana weren't strong. Later, the Ghana Alpha used Purgatory Heaven and the shield of the Medusa's gaze, both of which were deified weapons, to control the world. Very few could fight them. People like Ancient Water God couldn't even enter the door to the Geno Hall. But the Ghana Alpha had fought inside the hall for a few days before she fell. That proved how strong she was. For ordinary races, the strongest deified weapon would be their race weapon. The Ghana Alpha had the Ghana's race weapon Purgatory Heaven, but her strongest deified weapon was the shield of the Medusa's gaze. Because of this weapon, she was able to control most creatures in the world and fight them. Meng Lai heard about how powerful the shield of the Medusa's gaze was, but he had never seen it himself. If he had been able to choose, he would have opted to never lay eyes on the terrifying power of the shield of the Medusa's gaze. And the last thing he would ever hope for would be to end up as its target. Die! Meng Lai roared, gnashing his teeth. He sent all his power into his gold soldier king body. A scary knife light fell with incredible power. He wanted to kill Han Sen before he activated the shield of the Medusa's gaze. Meng Lai couldn't allow that ancient weapon to fully activate. The gold knife light was like a cosmic aurora that could break the sky and destroy the ground. It wasn't something a mere shield could block. That scary power was everywhere. Han Sen would be killed even if he hid behind the shield. Han Sen had no other choice. He gritted his teeth and poured all of his power into the shield of the Medusa's gaze. He used his power for a final gambit. The people in the white whale were in shock. The power Ming Lai unleashed was too scary to behold. The amount of energy he had placed in his attack was enough to devastate an entire race. It was like a punishment from God that couldn't be resisted. Mr. Ming Lai is too strong. He earns his reputation as a deified of the extreme king. He is much better than the deified elites of lesser races. Of course, our royal uncle is very special. The extreme king knights were all so happy. They hoped Ming Lai's destroying the sky and breaking the Gru Indi attack could kill Han Sen and save them from Han Sen's people. The pirates and Fong Qing were all scared. Even if there had been 1,000,000 of them, that strike had enough power to reduce all of them to dust. They couldn't comprehend the amount of power that was being unleashed. The pirates had traveled around the galaxy for years, and they had never seen this sort of power before. Their legs all quivered, and they thought, "It is over. It is over. It looks like the captain is going to die here." The captain was quite nice. He didn't mistreat us. If we end up under the extreme king's thumb, it's hard to tell what will become of us. I don't know if we will be permitted to live. Gu Qingsheng and Elysian Moon looked ill. That power was stronger than they knew. Ningyu was holding Bauer, and she was crying. Is he going to kill us, too? I don't want to die. The little red bird's mouth continued to spew out its phoenix flames. Its fire became a sea of flames that tried to subdue the gold knife light. But the sea of fire couldn't stop the gold knife light. The flames would explode like fireworks when the light touched them, and the light showed no sign of slowing down. Isha's expression hardened. The teeth knife in her left hand swung through the air, and a space crack headed in Han Sen's direction. A rift appeared next to Han Sen. If Han Sen went through that rift, he could avoid Ming Lai's wrath. But Han Sen didn't see the space crack. His eyes were red. They were too red. It was so scary. He stared at Ming Lai. Han Sen didn't remain immobile because he didn't want to escape. He simply couldn't. All the power in Han Sen's body was being sucked up by the shield of the Medusa's gaze. The moment the shield of the Medusa's gaze lit up, Han Sen felt as if his power was a wild horse that had escaped its reins. It went thundering into the shield of the Medusa's gaze. His body seemed to have been sucked dry. The power from his 4 Geno arts drained out of him within a second. Han Sen suddenly became emaciated. He looked like a skeleton. It was like some which had consumed all of his blood until he was nothing but a bloodless husk. His muscles were dying, and his skin was tight against his bones. He had become a dried-up human. Even the light of the peacock's soul robe dimmed. The rainbow light extinguished, and the peacock king beast's soul almost died. The eyes of the woman on the shield of the Medusa's gaze opened a little. It was like she was half awake and half asleep, with her heavy eyelids barely parted. As those eyes opened, 2 weird purple lights emerged. They shone on the gold knife light that could destroy the universe. In the future, onlookers would have a very difficult time describing what happened next. The strange light from the Medusa's eyes met the terrifying gold knife light, and the knife light froze in place. It wasn't just the gold knife light, either. Wherever that weird light shone on, everything froze. Even Ming Lai, who had previously seemed like an untouchable god. Both he and his gold lion head knife were motionless, still caught in mid-slash like a freeze frame from a movie. The purple light continued to shine. It wasn't just Ming Lai beneath that weird light. The purple color was spreading so fast, and many asteroids and planets were caught within it. They were frozen, and still, the light spread. If this continued, perhaps the whole system would be frozen. Blurg. Han Sen coughed up some blood. He separated himself from the shield of the Medusa's gaze. The moment Han Sen moved away from the shield of the Medusa's gaze, the eyes of the weird woman on the shield shut. The weird purple light vanished. But that region of space was still frozen in a purple hue. Ming Lai, the gold lion head knife, and the scary knife light hung in space like statues. And the nearby planets had once been spinning, but now they were purple and still. The scene was surreal and unsettling, something that shouldn't have been able to exist. The whole system looked dead. Everyone who could see this stared with open mouths. No one made a sound. The sight before them was too frightening for them to think about, and too strange to understand. They didn't even know how to respond. Miss Mirror waved her hands, and a mirror appeared. She stepped into it and disappeared. Let's go. Han Sen returned to the white whale and allowed Bauer to fly the white whale away. He felt terrible. The energy in his body was all gone, and his flesh was about to collapse. Even his Peacock King soul robe had been drained. If he hadn't used the super god spirit body to separate himself from the shield of the Medusa's gaze, he and the Peacock King's soul robe would have been reduced to ash. Too scary, Han Sen thought, still reeling from what had happened. The price of using the shield of the Medusa's gaze was far greater than he could willingly accept. Furthermore, the eyes of the woman on the shield of the Medusa's gaze had only opened a little. Who could fathom how much power would be required to open both of her eyes completely? Until he became deified, Han Sen was no longer going to use it. It would kill him. Fortunately, after what happened, no one bothered to hunt him down. Aside from a few space xenogenics, nothing living bothered him. It wasn't like the Extreme King or other races couldn't find Han Sen. They simply didn't dare to. Meng Lai hung in space like a purple ice sculpture. The people who wanted to chase Han Sen down witnessed everything, and they decided that going after Han Sen was no longer worth it. The Extreme King paid a high price to remove Meng Lai from space. Han Sen could use the shield of the Medusa's gaze. Every race thought this was unbelievable. It was a true god weapon, and ordinary deifieds couldn't touch it. Han Sen was only a king, yet he had somehow accessed the weapon's horrifying power. It made every race fear him. Until Han Sen figured out how far he could go with the shield of the Medusa's gaze, no one dared to trouble him. If Han Sen was able to activate the entire power contained within the shield of the Medusa's gaze, no one would be able to defeat him aside from a true god deified. Now that no one was interfering with his travel, Han Sen and his people traveled through the remainder of the systems of chaos and safety. They reached Sky Palace without further danger. But Han Sen's situation wasn't good. The shield of the Medusa's gaze had sucked his body dry. After a month, Han Sen had yet to recover. The strength of his body had been drastically reduced. His legs were soft when he walked. It would take him another 2 or 3 years to fully recover. Fortunately, no one from the outside was aware of what had happened to him. They were in Sky Palace now, as well, so there was no need to worry about security. Sky Palace sent a few elders to welcome Han Sen and Isha. They weren't showing such respect because of Isha and the rebate, though. They had come because Han Sen was a very important individual. Han Sen was able to bless deifieds, and he owned the charming god's Jin and the shield of the Medusa's gaze. Those things made Han Sen more valuable to them than the entire race of the rebate. It made Sky Palace treat him seriously. If they knew Han Sen also had the 9-spin Destiny Mirror and the Ghana's race weapon Purgatory Heaven, who knew what they would think? Han Sen rested in Sky Palace. Sky Palace sent many powerful deified elites skilled in healing to treat him, but they didn't achieve very good results. Han Sen wasn't just injured. He had exhausted his genes, and recovery wouldn't come easy. They were there for a few days when Isha told Han Sen that Han Minger was there. It made Han Sen very happy. Han Sen thought that Narrow Moon might have been affected because of what he had done. It was good that Han Minger and the others were allowed into Sky Palace. But Han Sen hadn't seen Han Minger and the others just yet. Isha smiled and didn't explain. She invited Han Sen to come with her. They left the xenogenic space of Sky Palace and headed to a nearby system that was also owned by Sky Palace. Sky Palace owned many systems, and this was an important one within their domain. As Han Sen flew alongside Isha, he noticed that his surroundings weren't as he remembered. There used to be many stars in this area of space, but now it was empty. There wasn't even an asteroid. Did a big fight take place here? Did the people of the Extreme King come? Han Sen asked Isha with confusion. Isha laughed and didn't say a word. She looked out across space. Han Sen followed her gaze. There, he saw many stars. It was nothing special, but soon after, Han Sen heard the sound of thunder echo through space. Even the vacuum couldn't stop that sound from being transmitted. Han Sen looked in the direction that the sound had come from, and then, his mouth dropped open in shock. He couldn't believe his eyes. He was looking at Narrow Moon. All the planets of Narrow Moon moving toward him, heading for the empty section of space that he and Isha hovered in. The scene was extremely shocking. A scary elite of Sky Palace was behind the star. He had a whip. Every time he swung the whip, the crack of thunder sounded. The cluster of stars were like many fat sheep. They were slowly being pushed forward. The very large narrow moon was being whipped forward into this place. This can actually happen. Han Sen had no idea how to process what he was seeing. He never dreamed of something like this being possible. Isha smiled and said, "If I wasn't prepared, I would never have allowed the people of the rebate to be put at risk. This is a deified weapon of Sky Palace. It is the Chase Star Whip, and it can make stars listen to its commands. I invited Sky Palace's leader to help me move Narrow Moon to this area. That is why we have allied with Sky Palace." Han Sen watched the whole of Narrow Moon be moved into an empty region of space. He assumed that the old system must have been moved elsewhere to keep that region open for Narrow Moon. After Narrow Moon came to rest in its new home, Isha took Han Sen over to thank the Sky Palace elder. The elder smiled and said, "This is only me doing what I should. There is no need to thank me." The elder took the Chase Star Whip with him when he left. Han Sen couldn't wait to enter Narrow Moon. He flew straight to Planet Eclipse and saw Han Menger. He was so happy. The rebate were talking about the deal that allowed them to join up with Sky Palace, but the part that included Han Sen was still something that had to be discussed. Because Han Sen was worth more than the whole of the rebate, Isha only negotiated terms for the rebate themselves. She didn't include Han Sen in the discussions. Sky Palace had come up with many plans, but Han Sen decided to join Sky Palace as a member of the rebate. He didn't join Sky Palace as just himself. By doing that, he lost many of the benefits he could have earned. But Isha had risked so much in the systems of chaos to save him. She moved the whole of the rebate because of it, and she had made enemies of the Extreme King in the process. That was a big favor. Han Sen couldn't abandon the rebate and join Sky Palace alone. Han Sen was a part of the rebate now, but he was a very prestigious individual in Sky Palace, and he could come and go as he pleased. He was treated like one of the people of Sky Palace, as if he shared a direct lineage with them. Han Sen even had an island for himself in Sky Palace. It was the Little Jade Island he used to occupy. Little Silver and Little Star were registered to occupy the Little Jade Island as well. Han Sen wanted to use his Blood Pulse Sutra power on them to make their blood stronger. But his body had yet to recover, and so, he could no longer do it. Little Silver tried to heal Han Sen's damaged body using his healing powers in all of their electrifying glory. His attempt did have a positive effect, but it was fairly minuscule. Han Sen gave the Thunder God Spike to Little Silver. Little Silver and the Thunder God Spike's power could benefit each other, so it would be good for his evolution. He used glasses to examine all the creatures around him. They all had a 5-star potential, and in regards to their real potential, he would find that out once they became deified. One day, Han Sen was on his island sunbathing. Bauer was sitting nearby, still nibbling her purple ginseng. It wasn't getting any smaller, despite her constant gnawing. Little Angel and Zero were preparing lunch. Han Menger was holding the 6-core snake bow, and she was practicing archery. Little Silver and Little Star were lying on the ground quietly. There was a little beast that was like a white snowball scurrying around. Snowball was a creature from the sanctuaries. It was very special, as it could shield itself inside a white orb that couldn't be broken. Han Sen had brought the little creature to the Geno universe back when he was on Planet Eclipse. Snowball had a good relationship with Xie Qingqing, and it had spent most of its time in the universe following him about. When Narrow Moon was first brought to Sky Palace, Snowball wasn't there. It had been with Xie Qingqing. Han Sen was wondering why Xie Qingqing had sent Snowball to him, instead of just calling him on the phone. When Han Sen saw the item Snowball had come to deliver, he realized with shock that Xie Qingqing's overbearing president Love Luov had been made into a movie that was going to be on air soon. Snowball's delivery of a ticket of admission was a roundabout way of showing off. Han Sen searched the internet of the universe and found that Xie Qingqing's overbearing president Love Luov was insanely popular. His title was Teacher Xie. Han Sen tried to find out how many copies of overbearing president Love Luov had been sold so far, and there were many zeros. There were at least 1 billion, Han Sen thought. Good grief. How much did Xie Qingqing earn? Han Sen was frozen. No matter how much Han Sen fought or all the deified weapons he earned, he hadn't made as much money as Xie Qingqing and his drawings. Should I start drawing something too? Han Sen was interested in the concept, but he realized that his drawing abilities were more than lacking. So, he shelved the idea. Sky Palace was going to be screening the movie too. Han Sen brought Han Minger with him to watch it. It was just going to be them, so they could have the entire theater exclusively for themselves. When they went to the theater, Han Sen encountered Yun Suyi, Yun Susang, and Thousand Feather Crane. They were all king class now. They had progressed just as quickly as Han Sen. In fact, Han Sen's progress hadn't been all that fast. He was slowed by his need to fulfill the requirements of 4 separate Geno arts. If he only practiced one, and it wasn't the story of genes, he would have likely been deified by now. Brother Han, are you all right? Yun Sui asked, looking at Han Sen. They had wanted to visit the little Jade Island to see Han Sen a while ago, but Sky Palace forbade ordinary people from visiting there. So, this was the first time they had seen Han Sen in a long time. Han Sen didn't look so good. His body was all dry like a piece of smoked meat. It took Thousand Feather Crane a minute to recognize him. Much better. I'm almost okay. I was going to visit you guys a few days ago, but Elder Yun wouldn't let me leave the little Jade Island until now, Han Sen explained. We know. We were told the same thing, or we would have already visited you on the little Jade Island, Thousand Feather Crane said. The movie is going to start. Let's go in. Yun Susang said with a smile. Han Sen bought the whole theater. There was a lot of space, so he invited them there to watch it all together. Due to Han Sen already knowing what happened in the story, he wasn't too caught up in the movie. He was surprised to see Yun Suyi and Yun Susang like it as much as they did. They were very excited. They would laugh at times, and at other times weep and cry their eyes out. In the end, the main character rescued a female character. When they kissed, Yun Suyi and Yun Susang were so touched. Their eyes almost turned into the shape of little hearts. It doesn't matter how strong a woman might be. They all have the same heart. Han Sen couldn't help but sigh. After the movie finished, Han Sen invited the 3 of them to have dinner. They talked comfortably together as they headed back. How come I never hear about Lone Bamboo anymore? Han Sen asked Thousand Feather Crane. He had asked other people about Lone Bamboo, but they were all so dodgy about the subject that he never really received an answer. Thousand Feather Crane hesitated, but Yun Suyi said angrily, "It is because of that exquisite." Exquisite? Han Sen was shocked. He knew the name, but he didn't think exquisite would have anything to do with Lone Bamboo. Suyi, stop talking. Thousand Feather Crane frowned. Is this something I'm not allowed to know about? Han Sen asked, glancing at Thousand Feather Crane. Thousand Feather Crane shook his head and said, "Not exactly, but this incident cannot be helped. Even if you know, there is nothing you can do. If it isn't taboo, then why don't you just tell me?" Han Sen said. Thousand Feather Crane still hesitated. Yun Suyi had practically told Han Sen the whole story, anyway. There was a good connection between Sky Palace and the Very High. People often believed Sky Palace was the mouthpiece for the Very High. Although Sky Palace wasn't one of the 3 highest races, the Extreme King were quite scared of Sky Palace as well. In fact, Sky Palace depended on the power of the Very High. So, Exquisite and the other Very High came to Sky Palace. They asked Lone Bamboo and Yu Shanshin to join the Very High, and it was a request that Sky Palace couldn't refuse. Yu Shanshin agreed, whereas Lone Bamboo refused Exquisite's offer. This created some tension and a widening rift between Sky Palace and the Very High. The Very High didn't relent in their request, though, and Lone Bamboo didn't waver or give in to their demands. So, the leader of Sky Palace locked Lone Bamboo up. Couldn't Lone Bamboo refuse to join the Very High? Han Sen asked with a frown. Thousand Feather Crane shook his head with a wry smile. The relationship between Sky Palace and the Very High is very complicated. It seems as if there was some sort of agreement in place. Our leader is in hot water right now. He cannot refuse the demands of the Very High. If Lone Bamboo is locked up, does that mean that they've dropped their demand? Han Sen asked with a frown. Thousand Feather Crane chuckled and said, "Were it so easy. The Very High haven't said anything. They haven't yet said whether or not Lone Bamboo has to go. If they haven't canceled their request, we have to respond somehow. We cannot sweep this matter under the rug." Han Sen didn't have many ideas on how to resolve the matter. If two armies were fighting and Lone Bamboo was in danger, he would gladly join the fight. But right now, Lone Bamboo was incarcerated by the powers presiding over Sky Palace. Furthermore, they weren't at war with the Very High. Therefore, Han Sen had no way of helping. This is a hard situation to deal with. The Very High didn't want Lone Bamboo to join them permanently. It was supposed to be a temporary thing. Plus, they would have given Lone Bamboo a lot of resources. Others would beg for the benefits he would have been given for free. I don't know why Lone Bamboo would so firmly decide against going, Thousand Feather Crane said with a sigh. Han Sen thought that he understood what Lone Bamboo was thinking, but he hadn't spoken to the man in person yet. Therefore, he didn't know if his guesses were accurate. The next day, Han Sen went to ask the 10th elder, Yun Changkong, about being allowed to see Lone Bamboo. Yun Changkong was Yun Suyi and Yun Sushang's father, and he was Thousand Feather Crane's teacher. He had a good relationship with Han Sen, and he didn't deny his request. Maybe you can convince Lone Bamboo that joining the Very High isn't so bad, Yun Changkong said to Han Sen. Han Sen agreed. Then, Yun Changkong asked people to take Han Sen to the prison. Han Sen thought Sky Palace was just putting on a show, but when he went to the prison, he learned things weren't as simple as he initially believed. 12 suppressed demon locks were pierced through Lone Bamboo's body. They pinned him to a suppressed demon stone. He was covered in blood. Even his collarbones had been punctured. Han Sen was shocked. You are here. Lone Bamboo's limbs were locked painfully against the suppressed demon stone, and while he was in bad shape, he was still able to smile. It would have been impossible for anyone to look good under the circumstances, though. Those 12 suppressed demon locks had 12 different powers. There was water, fire, thunder, lightning, and 8 other powers that attacked his body continually. Even deified elites might not last very long under these conditions. It wasn't like it would kill him, but being tortured like this, day and night, was a fate that was worse than death. Is treating you this poorly really necessary? Han Sen demanded, growing a little angry as he looked at Lone Bamboo. Lone Bamboo was a student of the leader of the Sky Palace. He had the blood of Sky Palace's people, and yet, he was treated in this manner. There wasn't an ounce of sympathy being shown for him, and so the sight would give anyone a nasty chill. Don't be mad at them. This is all my own doing. Lone Bamboo chuckled bitterly. Han Sen brought out a bottle he had smuggled in. He gave Lone Bamboo a few sips of the beverage. After swallowing some himself, he asked, "Why do you refuse to join the Very High?" Lone Bamboo licked the wine on his lips and said, "Joining the Very High would be very good for me. If I don't go, it might take me a decade or 2 to become deified. If I go to the Very High, I could become deified in only 3 years. If you understand that, then why don't you go?" Han Sen asked, looking at Lone Bamboo. He knew that the man must have his reasons. Lone Bamboo looked at Han Sen and didn't answer his question. He asked, "You like running naked?" I guess I don't." Han Sen didn't know what Lone Bamboo meant, and so his answer was uncertain. Lone Bamboo smiled and said, "I don't like it either. So, no matter how many benefits the Very High offer me or how much punishment I must endure, I'm not going to the Very High." "What do you mean? Are you saying the Very High like to run naked? You must take off all your clothes while you're there?" Han Sen imagined Exquisite and Li Keir frolicking naked. It was an image that made him smile. Of course, Han Sen was just joking. He knew the Very High wouldn't be that creepy. The Very High's very high sense can sense anything in the world. If you are chosen by them, you become a medium for them to feel the world. They can feel everything you do. If you eat, they can taste the saltiness, sweetness, sourness, or spiciness of your food. When you shower, they will know if it is hot or cold. Your emotions, your hobbies, or even your feelings when you sleep with a woman. The Very High will get to experience everything. If you were in my position, would you go? Lone Bamboo asked, looking at Han Sen. Are the Very High that sick? Han Sen's eyes were wide. This is merely my perspective. Of course, they might not be interested in which woman you sleep with, but regardless, you have no way of shutting off their power to feel whatever you do. Once you are plugged into their ability, there is no cancellation. They will always have their hooks in you, and I doubt they would ever willingly sever such a connection, Lone Bamboo said. Are you sure that's how this works? Han Sen asked seriously. Lone Bamboo smiled and said, if there is a race in this universe that can understand the very high the most, it would be us, the sky. Although there is no real evidence, many generations of the sky have worked for the very high. This is a 90% accurate hypothesis. If things are like that, then I wouldn't go no matter what, Han Sen said with a nod. Han Sen held the bottle of wine up for Lone Bamboo to have a few more sips. He asked, but if you continue to refuse, will the very high let you go? I don't know, Lone Bamboo admitted with a shake of his head. Han Sen didn't ask anything further. He chatted with Lone Bamboo for a bit longer, and after he finished his wine, he left the prison. Han Sen was walking away, and as he did, he thought to himself, why would the very high want Lone Bamboo so badly? There must be a way I can help him. He left the restricted area and saw a man sitting on a white crane. The man was smiling at Han Sen. Uncle Yu. Han Sen raised his eyebrows at the sight of Yu Shanshin. Yu Shanshin had gone to the lands occupied by the dragons to save Han Sen once before. So, Han Sen was very polite whenever he saw the man. Yu Shanshin smiled and said, we should walk together, assuming that is okay with you. Are you coming for Lone Bamboo? Han Sen asked Yu Shanshin as he followed him. No, I'm here for you, Yu Shanshin answered. That surprised Han Sen. Before Han Sen said anything, Yu Shanshin went on to say, Sky Palace made a deal with the Very High. So, whoever the Very High selects must go. If Lone Bamboo doesn't go, then we must find a worthy replacement. That person you are suggesting can't be me, can it? Han Sen smiled wryly. Aside from Lone Bamboo, the only other one of this generation that can impress the Very High is you, Yu Shanshin said with a smile. I can't do it either, Han Sen said with a vigorous shake of his head. He didn't like running around naked any more than Lone Bamboo. Yu Shanshin had expected Han Sen to react this way, and so he coldly said, I'm sure Lone Bamboo filled you in on what the Very High are like. I waited until now to see you so that I wouldn't have to waste my breath. Uncle Yu, you don't need to try to convince me. My thoughts on the matter are the same as Lone Bamboo's. I would rather go to prison than go to the Very High, Han Sen said with a shake of his head. Yu Shanshin's expression didn't fluctuate in the slightest after hearing Han Sen's speech. He asked calmly, have you heard the tale of the Sky Alpha known as Suppressed Demon? No, Han Sen wasn't in the mood for a story, but if someone like Yu Shanshin wanted to talk, then Han Sen would listen. Yu Shanshin's smooth voice remained just loud enough for Han Sen to hear him. In ancient times, before the interstellar area, the sky lived on a planet where a demon also resided. It ate people. The demon would eat one person every day, but the demon didn't have its own body. If it wanted to eat someone, it would have to possess the body of one sky to devour the body of another. Because they were unable to prevent the demon from possessing them, the sky had many incidents involving fathers eating their sons, wives eating husbands, or even children eating their grandparents. Those things continued to happen until our Alpha rose to the challenge. He offered himself to the demon and allowed the demon to assume control of his body. And? Did the Sky Alpha somehow imprison the demon? Han Sen was curious. No. Our Alpha's power wasn't vastly superior to that of the average sky. The demon gained control of his body, too. The demon used him to eat many sky, Yu Shanshin said flatly. That answer wasn't what Han Sen had expected. Yu Shanshin looked at Han Sen and went on to say, although our Alpha was controlled by the demon, he managed to accomplish something more than most possess sky. Other sky, when they were controlled by the demon, still had their will. But they didn't hate the demon. They were scared of it like a tiger. Even if they pretended not to be, they couldn't lie to the demon. That was because when the demon possessed a sky, it could peer into their thoughts. No matter what that person did, they couldn't lie to the demon. So, it didn't matter what they said or did. The demon would still see into their thoughts. The demon would control them and force them to kill themselves. The Alpha was the only exception to this. What did he do? Han Sen had become very curious. He didn't do anything. He befriended the demon, Yu Shanshin said. I thought you said the demon could see through the thoughts of the sky. How could the Alpha trick a demon like that? Han Sen asked with confusion. The sky's Alpha must have hated the demon. Yu Shanshin laughed and said, That is why Master Alpha was different. He faced an enemy that he hated the most, yet he was able to let go of that anger and treat the demon so kindly. It was as if he considered the demon to be his own son, and no matter how much the demon did wrong, he still forgave it. That was a care that came from the heart. In this universe, aside from my Alpha, I have yet to see anyone be able to do the same thing. Are you saying the kindness of Master Alpha touched that demon? Han Sen couldn't guess the ending of this story, so this was his best attempt. Yes, Master Alpha's kindness had an impact on the demon. That demon was only supposed to possess someone for a single day before disposing of the host. But when it entered the Alpha's body, it remained there. It never left him, until Master Alpha found a weakness inside the demon and killed it. He ended the nightmare that had plagued the sky for as long as my people could remember, Yu Shanshin said. Han Sen was blown away by this story. The Alpha had used love to earn the trust of a demon that could read people's minds, and then killed the demon he had grown to love. Han Sen didn't know what sort of person could do that. If he had been in the Alpha's place, Han Sen didn't think he could have achieved the same. Teacher Yu, your Alpha is a real saint. I'm just a normal man. Do you want me to go feed a demon? I can't do it. I would be angered by the very high, and I would likely end up dead. Han Sen understood what Yu Shanshin meant by telling him the story, but he knew that he couldn't do it. Understanding didn't matter. It's okay if you can't do it. I can help you, Yu Shanshin said with a smile. Really? You can help with this? Han Sen asked skeptically. He thought Yu Shanshin must have been yanking his chain. Yu Shanshin laughed and said, Do you know why my name is Yu Shanshin? How am I supposed to know something like that? Han Sen thought to himself. But what he said was, I have heard your temper got better when you received this name, Mr. Yu. Was it to make you think more positive things? Yu Shanshin smiled and said, I thank you for thinking so highly of me, but I don't really have positive thoughts. The reason why I am called Yu Shanshin is to tell myself that no matter what happens, I should never give up on myself. It doesn't matter if I become evil or commit a crime no one else can accept. It doesn't matter how much I am hated. At the very least, I can avoid hating myself. I need a good heart to love myself with. Han Sen was frozen. This was the first time he had ever heard someone explain their good heart to someone else. The Geno arts I practice are based on evil powers. If I think of evil things, they will be more powerful. When I was younger, the reason I came to Sky Palace to kill the elders was precisely because of this. But the stronger this Geno art becomes, the more it claims me. I didn't practice the skills of killing. I trained the mental fortitude of not allowing myself to ever be claimed by evil. Only I can control myself in this world. No one else can use me. Not even God. Yu Shanshin was speaking so quietly, but Han Sen could feel the overbearing weight of the man's words. But Han Sen didn't understand how this conversation had anything to do with the very high. Yu Shanshin looked at Han Sen and smiled. The extreme evil path I have practiced doesn't have a sensing power like the very high, but it does contain a unique ability. I can use my evil to possess you. And when the very high use their senses to invade your mind, they will only touch the evil of my mind. And so, all they will feel are my feelings. It will mean that they cannot feel anything about you. That way, you won't have to worry about their invasive senses. You can enjoy all the benefits of the very high without having to worry about being watched. Would you reject a swathe of benefits like that? You can really do that? Han Sen didn't doubt what Yu Shanshin was saying, despite how far-fetched it seemed. Still, he felt compelled to ask. If you don't believe me, we can conduct a test. Meet Exquisite from the very high, and then you can find out if I'm telling the truth or not, Yu Shanshin said with a smile. Han Sen didn't believe him, but he hadn't yet tried the test that Yu Shanshin had suggested. He wanted to help Lone Bamboo, but he wasn't going to the very high on his friend's behalf. Seeing Han Sen leave, Yu Shanshin smiled. He did not get mad at Han Sen's rejection. Back on the small jade island, Han Sen continued to absorb King Genes. He wanted to get the story of Genes to the 9th tier as soon as he could. Han Sen called Gu Qingqing over to discuss the matter of Lone Bamboo. Gu Qingqing listened to his tale and said to him, Yu Shanshin is correct. It doesn't matter who ends up going, but Sky Palace will need to send someone else to the very high. Their demand cannot be ignored. Sky Palace has many people. Is it necessary for me to go? Han Sen said. Gu Qingqing shook her head. It isn't that simple. If it was, Sky Palace wouldn't have put their beloved son in jail. I don't think Sky Palace can choose which individual goes. They will need a person that interests the very high. Otherwise, a swap won't work. And that is why Yu Shanxin is trying to convince you. I'm not stupid. I won't go even if they personally invite me. And he wants me to beg before the very high like I'm a slave? Han Sen said with a lift of his lips. It isn't like that. To normal people, going to the very high is a grand opportunity. They are the ones who want to do the begging. You and Lone Bamboo are special. If you weren't special, I don't think the very high would care as much as they do now. Gu Qingqing smiled as she spoke. Is there no other way? Han Sen asked. That would depend on Sky Palace. If they don't want to enter a disagreement with the very high, they will have to send someone no matter what. The two of them discussed the matter a little more, but they were unable to come up with any ideas. Their power wouldn't be nearly enough to go against the very high. Whatever they tried would be ineffective. If Lone Bamboo hasn't been taken away, that means there is room for negotiation. We will find a way to navigate through this. Han Sen kept trying to think of a way to help Lone Bamboo as he practiced. Brother Han, there is a meeting with the very high. Are you joining? Yun Suyi asked with a look of anger. She had come over to visit the little Jade Island. What meeting? Han Sen asked with confusion. He had been recovering there for some time, so he hadn't heard a thing about a meeting. Yun Suyi explained. The younger Very High and Sky will be exchanging Geno arts. They said there is to be a discussion, but it is more like the Very High will talk, and we will just sit there listening. What will they talk about? Han Sen asked with curiosity. The Geno arts of the Very High are very expansive. They know the Geno arts of many races, so they can talk about anything. They're really that good? Maybe I should go and listen then? Han Sen didn't really want to go and listen to Geno arts. He just wanted to confirm that this exquisite was the same exquisite he had encountered in the core area. He established a time with Yun Suyi. The next night, Han Sen took Bauer and Gu Qingqing with him. He met up with Yun Suyi and some other people from Sky Palace. Together, they joined the meeting. The meeting was taking place on Thousand Lake Island. That island was strange. Its center was a lake, and the lake's water constantly spilled onto the lower levels of the island. The whole island was like a sloped collection of lakes. The Very High held their meeting at the center of the lake. There was a lotus platform that was around the size of a soccer pitch. It was floating in the center of the lake, and there were pavilions scattered around it. When Han Sen arrived, the meeting area was full of Sky Palace students. Most of the students could only listen from their pavilions. Some of the higher-class students were able to sit on the lotus platform itself to talk directly with the Very High. They said they were going to occupy the same tables as everyone else, but the Very High were actually occupying the primary seats. The Sky Palace students could only sit to the side, and it was usually the Sky Palace students that had to ask questions. The Very High were always the ones answering. They were like teachers answering their students. Thousand Feather Crane and the Yun sisters brought Han Sen and Gu Qingqing to the lotus platform. The Sky Palace students knew all about Han's senator. They greeted him and immediately allowed him to take the finest seats. Han Sen only wanted to find some place random to sit down, but the people there were excited. The Sky Palace students kept pushing him forward, and so he couldn't refuse them. He had to sit down someplace more distinguished. It wasn't like the students of Sky Palace forced him deliberately. Everyone knew about Han Sen fighting Ming Lai in the Systems of Chaos. There wasn't a person in Sky Palace who hadn't heard the story. He was a king class that could defeat Ming Lai. He deserved to take the number 1 seat, above the Sky Palace kings and half-deifieds. Plus, Han Sen was quite famous in Sky Palace. He and Lone Bamboo were called the Knife and Sword Masters. They had become teachers. If Lone Bamboo wasn't there, then it was natural for Han Sen to sit in the most respected position. Not long after, both sides of the lotus platform were full of Sky Palace students. But the center seats were still empty. Do the Very High really think so highly of themselves? A Sky Palace student asked coldly. It was because of Lone Bamboo that the Sky Palace students disliked the Very High. That meeting wasn't going to be as cordial as previous ones. But while everyone discussed the Very High, a white jade carriage flew toward them. The jade beasts that pulled the carriage were like tigers of some sort. They looked almost like a mascot. They were obviously special. When Han Sen looked the creatures over, he was surprised. He didn't recognize what species the jade beasts belonged to, but when he felt their presence, he could immediately tell they were deifieds. There were 6 of those jade beasts pulling the carriage. That power was something even Sky Palace's leader could appreciate. Han Sen was surprised by how strong these very high must be when he saw their mode of transportation. But Han Sen's initial assumption that the carriage belonged to Exquisite was wrong. It was for the use of very high who were visiting other races. Many very high used it, so it didn't belong to anyone in particular. The beast carriage drove over to the Lotus platform. There, the beautiful jade car's door opened. A man and a woman emerged. Just as Han Sen thought, that woman was Li Qir's third sister, Exquisite. But this time, it wasn't Li Qir who was accompanying her. It was a man. The man and the woman walked to the primary seats and bowed before everyone. The man said airily, "I am sorry to have kept you guys waiting. If there are no other matters to discuss, let us get on with it. If you have questions, ask them. My sister and I will try to answer every question we are posed." He sounds way too cocky. He said this was an exchange, but it sounds more like a teacher talking to children, Han Sen thought to himself. While they were talking, Exquisite and the very high man took a seat. The man looked at the Sky Palace students on both sides. He saw Han Sen occupying the first seat with Gu Qingqing next to him. When the man looked at Gu Qingqing's face, his own face froze. He stared at her a little, and then pulled his gaze away. Gu Qingqing's face was breathtakingly pretty. Even those who were close with her, like Han Sen, would find themselves staring at her ethereal beauty now and again. The very high man had only looked at her for a moment or two before turning away. He had an impressive amount of self-control. Exquisite looked at her as well, but her vision paused on Han Sen for longer. After all, he was seated in a place of honor. That meeting had no deifieds. All the attendees were young elites, but if someone was sitting in the first seat, it had to mean that they were someone of prestige and importance to the Sky Palace. But at that moment, Han Sen wasn't looking good. He looked dry and thin, like a refugee that had spent too long without food. He was only skin and bones. "How might I refer to you?" Exquisite asked, looking at Han Senator. She had seen Han Sen's videos, but that was before he incurred his most recent injuries. He looked completely different right now, so she didn't recognize him. "I am Han Sen," Han Sen answered truthfully. Upon hearing Han Sen's name, that very high man couldn't help but turn to look at him. He clearly knew about Han Sen and what he had accomplished. "You are the one who owns the charming god's Jin and the shield of the Medusa's gaze? It is no wonder you look so special," Exquisite said emotionlessly. By special, she was referring to his physical appearance. She wasn't really complimenting him. From what she could see, Han Sen had simply lucked out by collecting 2 true god treasures. He was lucky and nothing more. That was her general conclusion. She believed the true merit of his power was nothing substantial. Han Sen's face looked sour. He didn't respond. He knew that Exquisite wasn't actually complimenting him. "If no one has any questions, I will start first. Let's talk about phenomenon," the man said calmly. After the man said this, the expressions on the faces of the students of the Sky Palace looked somewhat strained. Phenomenon was a secret Sky Palace Geno art, although it wasn't as special as the textless book. When the man said he wanted to talk about phenomenon, it was his way of saying, "The way you practice Geno arts is bad. Allow me to show you how it is done." The way the man spoke made many of the Sky Palace students upset, but they were seated before one of the very high, and so, no one did anything. The Sky Palace students stared at the man, waiting to hear what he was going to tell them. Han Sen could tell the man had selected this Geno art on purpose. He wanted to use this opportunity to build up his image before the young people of the Sky Palace. That was why he spoke in such a condescending way. Han Sen wanted to listen to him, too. That very high man was called Bishi, and Han Sen was keen to hear what input he could provide on phenomenon. Phenomenon refers to the universe's phenomena. Phenomenon is the reason for life existing. But people are stupid, and they cannot see through things without phenomena. People require clear signs to clarify the unknowable. The Sky students who heard this weren't impressed. It was an ordinary speech that didn't mean much to them. If they were required to speak, they would have said the same thing. It seemed as if the man knew what everyone was thinking, and so he coldly went on to say, I am one of those people too. I cannot get rid of this foolishness. I cannot see through things without phenomena. So, there is a saying, and it goes like this. Only if you go into phenomena and feel the phenomena and experience what is inside, do you have the chance to understand. That is the so-called Taoism. When I practiced phenomenon, the teacher talked about this the first day. Mr. Bishi doesn't need to explain this, so just get to the point, a Sky Palace student said hurriedly. Bishi didn't speak, and his face was unreadable. Since he first met her, Han Sen thought Exquisite merely pretended to be detached. But now, seeing Bishi, he noticed this emotionless expression was the only one they were capable of. This wasn't a pretense. Everyone knows Taoism, but in regards to how they know it, everyone has a different saying. There is no correct answer, Bishi said. Taoism is natural. Everyone has their own way of learning it. An answer isn't required, a student of Sky Palace said. I just said that a moment ago, Bishi replied. Phenomenon refers to the phenomena of the universe. If there are phenomena, there are rules. If there are no rules, there would be no reasons. Then, you would not need to learn it. The Sky Palace student fell quiet. He continued listening in silence. Bishi set something down on a table in front of him. Everyone looked at it. It was a square and transparent box that looked to have been made of crystal. It was a dozen centimeters wide. Within the box, they could see a crystalline ladybug. It sort of looked like a beetle. It was fairly cute. Bishi opened the crystal box, and the ladybug climbed out of it slowly. Then he said, every living creature has a path to follow, but understanding the reason for each path isn't easy. This is a beetle xenogenic called God's Spirit Touch. It is a very rare xenogenic. Through this, we can understand some of the rules and reasons here. After that, Bishi reached out his finger. He sliced his finger and pushed out a drop of his own blood onto the ladybug. The ladybug opened its mouth and drank that droplet of blood. And then, it stopped and remained still. It no longer moved. Everyone was shocked. They didn't know what Bishi was doing. As they watched in confused silence, the ladybug that had sucked up Bishi's blood began to show some weird changes. The ladybug was changing its skin. As it did so, its face contorted. It pulled its new body forward, leaving a perfect shell behind. And the process wasn't over, either. After changing a layer of its shell, the ladybug started twisting its body again. It quickly left a second, smaller shell behind. The fist-sized ladybug kept changing its skin. Every time it shed a skin, its body became smaller, and the shells it left behind were like perfect crystal beetle art. Each discarded shell was smaller than the last. As everyone watched, that beetle swapped its skin 9 times. Its body was eventually reduced to the size of a small coin. After that, it stopped moving. It just laid down where it was, looking very tired. Everyone looked at Bishi, waiting for his explanation. They had seen bugs change their skin before, but they didn't know what it had to do with what Bishi had been telling them. The God Spirit Touch is born very sensitive to blood, and it can tell you the quality of your birth genes. The stronger the gene blood, the more effect it will have on the beetle. Ordinarily, the genes of low-tier creatures can enable a beetle to swap its skin once or twice. If someone has high-class genes, the beetle can swap its skin 8 to 10 times. With my very high experience, I can tell you that if someone can make the God Spirit Touch shed its shell 10 times, that means the person conducting the test has genes that are strong enough to see them one day become a true god, Bishi said factually.